Hello and what's up, GSC Pokemon Challenges fam? We're back with episode 12 of the Clair Minimum Battles series. We're gonna try to make as much progress in this as we can. We've kind of found that Clair's a bit of a formality. Nothing has failed up to this point in this challenge. We can see all the member picks that have gotten through, all the Pokemon up there in that pass column, just a few in that OPTMs column where, yes, we had to drop rare candies and use like Hidden Power Dark, but still, this is turning out to not be that big of a challenge. Today, we're going to see if anything struggles at all as we go through this section. We're coming in with all of the Hitmons. We've got Lickitung, we've got Kangaskhan, then we've got a bunch of water types with our Seadra, Seaking, Starmie, Kabutops as a member pick, and Qwilfish, and I realized I left off Kingdra. So boom, there you go. We've got Kingdra as well. Clair's ace coming in on this action, and we've got to see how many of these 11 Pokemon get through, but I'm just going to be perfectly honest. I think we crush this section with all of these Pokemon. I think everything at this point has enough coverage, enough moves to be able to get through the Clair section and get to the doorstep of the league. I know it's kind of boring to see these runs where everything just gets through. I think when we get to the league, that's where things are actually going to start to ramp up. These fighting types, for example, they're not going to do nearly as well against Willy Boy as they're probably going to do in this section. I expect that Karen will also be a problem for them. So we could see some of these Pokemon fall off later, but I'm just going to predict right now that we get 11 for 11 through. I don't think that we have any real issues, but you know, let's test it and find out. We're going to lead off with that Hitmonlee. Let's get the Hitmons out of the way. Then we'll look at our normal types, and then we will go through a massive number of water types to see how they go. Let's get into this. So starting off with our Hitmonlee here, we're coming in with the moveset of Mud Slap, Meditate, Swift, and High Jump Kick. And I think overall this moveset is basically fine for this section of the game. Yes, a lot of things are going to resist fighting type moves with the poison type, but I don't think it's really going to matter. I think we've got enough damage output here that we should be able to get through the rocket section just fine. Let's check that that is in fact the case, of course. We don't get a lot of good level up moves here. We're just going to get Foresight and Endure in this section. I don't think we get to Mega Kick just yet. I'm not even sure we would want Mega Kick even if we got it. Obviously, we can throw on Headbutt over Swift if we ever want to, or Return is starting to be a legit move at this point in the game. Strength is also available for an upgrade. There aren't a lot of other moves for this Pokemon to learn, but I think that's going to be okay. I don't think it's actually going to struggle too much. Let's get into this and find out though. And without any issues, we make it to the Marlboro Man at the top of the tower. Now, of course, he's going to resist our High Jump Kick, but I think we'll be able to get through this. Let's see how it goes. So first things first, I'm going to see how I do if I just set up a couple Meditates here and then go into Swift. We won't even care about the smoke screens at that point. Swift is one hit KOing the first of the coughings. It will one hit the second coughing. It's going to take down the third coughing. That will bring out the wheezing. I'll go for Swift here. It's going to be a 2-hit KO. It tries to smoke screen. Good job. We get to level 37 right here. We hit Swift on the next coughing, and the final coughing is going down in a single hit. So I think that's perfectly fine. We get through basically consistently once we have Swift and we have access to that Meditate. I think we're perfectly fine. Now you're going to notice that I did actually learn the move Foresight over Mud Slap here, and my logic is pretty simple. Mud Slap is only a 20 base power move, so it's not like it's going to be super strong, particularly against ghosts, and it can't hit flying types, which resist our fighting type moves. The other piece of it was that I'm thinking ahead to ghosts. I'm thinking, for example, about the Gengar on Karen's team. How am I going to take that Pokemon down? I think the way that I'm going to do it is by using Foresight and then just knocking that Pokemon out with physical moves. We'll see if that actually works. We can test it right here on Rival 4 against his Haunter. Let's see how this goes. So here against Rival 4, I'm going to lead off by setting up Meditate right from the start. We take massive damage from a wing attack. Oh no. Let's see if Swift can take this Pokemon down. It does with 2 Meditates. That brings out Meganium. We can High Jump Kick right there, taking that Pokemon down. We get to level 38. Haunter comes out. I'm going Foresight right here. We get Shadow Ball though and get knocked out. We're going to have to try this one again. So the real question is, how many turns does it actually take to knock this Golbat out? I'm going to go for 1 Meditate here. We get a critical hit from the wing attack. I think we just have to reset in that case. The next attempt, we get confused instead, but we can hit Swift. We can see that with just 1 Meditate, it is a 2-hit KO. KO there. I think that's perfectly fine. I'm going to high jump kick on Meganium and not get the KO. That's pretty bad. Still, we take that Pokemon out. We can get to the Haunter. I'm going to use Foresight here in order to identify it. It goes Curse. We should just be able to go Swift after that and knock that Pokemon out. Sneasel comes out. We can go for the high jump kick and just get the one-hit KO. And Magnemite comes out. Same thing, high jump kick will end it. So it turns out just one Meditate is the way to go there. We obviously also don't want a critical hit from that Golbat, but if we can get that level of luck, that isn't really that bad of a fight, and we can move on in the game. But I think you can see what I'm talking about right there. If we had Mud Slap for the Ghost, it's not like that's going to be a great move there. If we can use Foresight and then use like high jump kick on them, that's going to do a lot more damage with this Pokemon. So I think that is the ideal play for when we get to Karen later on. That's what I'm looking forward to, so just keep that in mind when you look at the strategy. But with that done, now I think we can easily get through the rest of these randos. I don't expect them to give us any real troubles, so I'm going to make my way to the end of the tower and Mr. Meet Your Doom, aka Wannabe Giovanni, where I think that we're going to do just fine there with our fighting type moves. I think he's going to get completely wrecked, but let's see how it actually goes. So I figure we should talk about the third to last of the executives here because he actually might be the hardest one. He comes out with the Golbat here, of course. I'm going to try to go all in on attack. Let's see what Swift does. It does slightly less than half. We take a massive wing attack. Fortunately, we survive 2 wing attacks there, so we do win, but that is not an easy fight against Golbat. Golbat is really the main problem for this Hitmonlee. Fortunately, we still managed to get the job done. And with that fight done, we can make it to Wannabe Giovanni right here. I think high jump kick's gonna destroy him. Let's see how it goes. Of course, he leads off with the Houndour. We're just going to high jump kick that Pokemon and take it down in a single hit. Coughing comes out. I think Swift will 2-hit KO here. Sure enough, it does. So we take that Pokemon down nice and easy. And out comes the Houndoom. We missed the high jump kick. Oh no. Still, we hit the next one and we get the victory after he missed his attack. So we win on the first attempt. Really, the crash damage was the big thing that we were worried about there. But ultimately, it worked out. We're ready to move on to Claire, where fortunately, none of her Pokemon can resist our fighting type moves. So I think we're going to get through this one just fine. I think it's Rival 5 who's going to give us a little bit more trouble with the Golbat, but fortunately he leads off with Sneasel. That should allow us to build up some Meditates, and then maybe we can just sweep through the team from there. For now though, let's just make our way to the Dragon Gym and show Claire that dragons cannot stand up to basically Pokemon Bruce Lee. Now, at least on the Dragonair just before Claire, we did manage to one-hit KO it with a high jump kick. So that makes me think that going into this fight, we don't necessarily need to do anything, but I guess putting on a paralyzed Pure Berry is the best way to go here, just in case she manages to land a Thunder Wave on us after we miss a high jump kick. I'm going to see how this actually goes, but I think we've got pretty good chances of getting through even without setting up any Meditates, but let's see if that's actually the case. So here, of course, this Dragonair is one level higher than the Dragonair that I just one-hit KO'd, but the high jump kick still gets the KO there. We level up to level 44 right here as the second Dragonair comes out and gets completely destroyed. Third Dragonair comes out. We once again destroy this Pokemon. That brings out the Kingdra. I'm going to high jump kick it. It survives, but it goes for Smokescreen. I think we can just go Swift after that. It looks like a 3-hit KO here. Dragon Breath doesn't do enough, so we just easily beat Claire on the first attempt. She's gonna call hacks because how can punching and kicking beat a dragon? We're gonna tell her this isn't Game of Thrones right here. I mean, these dragons, they're a little bit soft. I'm just gonna be perfectly honest. We're obviously going all Kung Fu on her here, which, I mean, technically, there are some Kung Fu forms that would have names like, you know, Fist of the Dragon or something like that. So it could be that dragons are just weak against fighting type moves. I think that's canon. I think we can just make that, you know, the new logic of the Pokemon games. We're going to come explain it to the old guys down here who obviously have watched a lot of Kung Fu movies in the past. They're going to say, oh, yes, that makes a lot of sense. And on that basis, they're going to demand and that she gives us our badge, and we're gonna run off to take on Rival 5 while she runs to the league to go warn Lancey Boy about what's coming for him. There's a reason why Lance is only gonna use flying types against this Pokemon, because he knows if he used normal dragons, he would just get kicked and completely destroyed. And with no issues whatsoever, we make it to Rival 5 here. He's the last thing standing between us and the league, so let's just go ahead and destroy him, and we can see if Bruno's Pokemon would actually make it here. Let's find out. So here against the Rival, I'm going to lead off with a couple of Meditates right off the bat. We're not really worried about the Fury Cutter and Screech and whatnot here. We want to just reach the point where we can one-shot that Golbat. So I've gone to +4 attack. Now we'll just high jump kick and destroy that Pokemon. Golbat comes out next. We go Swift, and we do get the one-hitter. That will bring out Kadabra. We can go Swift again, destroying that Pokemon. Meganium comes out. We miss the high jump kick. We get Poison Powdered, but we can knock it out after that. That's going to bring out the Haunter. We're going to go Foresight right here just so that we can see this Haunter clearly and destroy it with the Swift. We could level up and learn Mega Kick at this point. I'm not sure it's worth learning this move. The inaccuracy is the problem. I'm thinking that Swift, while it is half the power, might actually be better in a lot of spots because we can build up with Meditate and then guarantee the hits. And if we really need a stronger physical move, we could always go for something like Return or Strength, which, while they're not going to ever be as strong as Mega Kick, I still think will make a lot of sense in the right situation. So I'm actually going to skip this move. Tell me if that's a mistake down below, but for now, that's the way we're going. The Magneton comes out, we high jump kick it, and we completely destroy that Pokemon. Just like that, we managed to beat the Rival on the first attempt, and we have made it to the league with Hitmonlee. Now, this Pokemon's going to have a bit of a gauntlet at the start of the league because it's going to struggle against Willy Boy. It's going to struggle against Koga and his poison types. If it gets to Bruno, I think we can beat Bruno. I'm just going to put that out there. But then I think we have another brutal section where we have to take down Karen and we have to take on Lance with his flying types. That could actually be hard. That's where the Mega Kick might have made sense, but keep in mind, Mega Kick only has 5 PP, and we do at least have the advantage of having a higher special defense stat in this generation, so maybe we can survive a Psychic or 2 from Willy Boy and find a way through. We're just going to have to test it and see, but for now, that's going to do it for this Pokemon. We're going to move on to the Hitmonchan. Let's see how that Pokemon goes. So here with Hitmonchan, we are coming in with Headbutt, Agility, Mach Punch, and Dynamic Punch. I think this moveset yet again will be enough to get us through. Obviously, we can use Agility to outspeed anything that's faster than us, so we'll just have to kind of see how that goes. If we get to the late game, we can always go Agility plus Curse strats as a way to build up and then hopefully sweep through teams. So that's going to be my strategy when we get to Kanto. For now, we're going to have to get through the rest of this Johto section. Elemental Punches are on the table, though they're never going to be super strong with this Pokemon. We can at least go for Ice Punch if we really want to. Headbutt is the move that can always just come off and be relearned afterwards, so we'll just kind of see how that goes. Mach Punch is going to be our most consistent move, and then Dynamic Punch is kind of our YOLO strat. So let's just see how this actually works out as we go through this section. And of course, with no issues, we make it to the Marlboro Man, so let's just see how he goes right here. I had to reset once because I came into this fight with no PP, but now that we have proper PP in the Headbutt, I think we've got reasonable chances to get through. Let's find out. So first up against the Coughings, we're just going to Headbutt here. This is going to be a 2-hit KO. We do get a smoke screen there, which is pretty bad. Still, if we don't start missing a bunch, we will be able to just 2-hit KO these Coughings and take them out pretty easily. We finally start missing on the third Coughing as it smoke screens again, but we do eventually take that one out. That brings out the Wheezing, which looks like a 3-hit KO here. Sludge does a lot of damage too, but we do take that Pokemon down and get to level 37. Now we're poisoned though, and our accuracy is completely shot. So I'm not sure if we're getting through on this attempt, especially because we ran out of Headbutt PP. We're gonna have to try this one again. Obviously, these Pokemon can flinch from the Headbutt, so that is a win condition for us. And it's kind of interesting that they're just going smoke screen like crazy on me. Like, I think if we just get fewer smoke screens, we can manage to win here. This time we're getting to the Wheezing with no accuracy drops, so we're doing way better in this one. Sludge still does a lot of damage damage, but we are able to 3-hit KO there, getting to level 37. We're on the last 2 Pokemon, and we should have enough headbutts provided that we don't start missing a bunch of times off of a smoke screen, and we get a flinch on the last coughing. So we get an easy victory that time. Turns out to work, but it's kind of inconsistent. I'm going to bet that we need a different move in order to get through this next fight. Obviously, none of our moves right now can actually hit a ghost. So I think we forget Headbutt. I think we learned something like Ice Punch here, just so that we have something for the Golbat and we have something for that Haunter that's coming up. As I've mentioned before, it's very easy to get lots of TMs here for this sort of Pokemon when you're using elemental punches. So we can really mix and match them. I've just put a bunch in the bag. Let's see how we actually do against the rival here though, where like I said, I think my first play is going to be to go Ice Punch and try to use that as a strategy to get through the Golbat. Obviously, we can get the freeze, we can get just good damage ranges, but we're going to have to see how this actually goes with our low special attack stat. So Rival 4 attempt number 1, Ice Punch does about half to the Golbat. We take a wing attack, but we do knock that Pokemon out, so that's perfectly fine. Meganium comes out. I'm going to hit Dynamic Punch here and confuse it. It goes Reflect. That's perfectly fine. We'll just Ice Punch that Pokemon down. We get to level 38 here. We could learn Mega Punch. I'm going to skip the move. It's not super strong, so I think we can just go without it. Haunter here, we have to go for the Ice Punch. It curses, but we can just knock it out from there. That brings out the Magnemite, which we can just Mach Punch. It's not a one-hit KO, funny enough. That's kind of scary. That brings us to Sneasel. Once again, I Mach Punch and I do KO that Pokemon. So we do manage to get through on the first attempt. It's not super pretty, but it ultimately does work out. We're going to stick with this moveset for now. I think this is enough to get through all the randos down here, and then we can make our way to Mr. Meet Your Doom at the end of this section. Funny enough, Ice Punch is going to be at least reasonably effective against everything that resists the fighting type. It's not like we're going to get great ranges, but these Coughings don't have great special defense, so we can hit them once with like an Ice Punch and then just Mach Punch them down, and pretty much everything else is weak against the fighting type here, so we should be just fine, but let's see how it actually works out. So this is another one where we should look at the Golbat executive rather than the final executive, I think. Ice Punch does about half. We survive the wing attack, so we do get the easy victory there, and with that, I think we're going to get through the rest of the executives without any major issues, but let's just see how these last 2 fights go. And sure enough, we make it to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni at the end of this section, so let's just go ahead and take him on. Hopefully we can just punch him and take him down nice and easy, but let's see how this actually works out. First up, we've got the Houndour. We're going to Mach Punch this Pokemon and take it down in a single hit. That's perfectly fine. Coughing comes out next. Ice Punch is a 2-hitter, but we freeze it, so we get the easy victory there. That brings out Houndoom. I'm going for Dynamic Punch here because I think we're going to need the power, especially after we get burned. Oh no. Still, once we hit Dynamic Punch, it's an easy 1-hit KO, so we get the victory on that Pokemon as well. Now we're ready to go to Claire's gym. We've got the Ice Punch. It's not going to be the strongest move on this Pokemon, but still, in theory, could get us a victory on the basis that it is super effective against the dragons. And of course, when we take on the random water types there, we should be fine to just use our fighting type moves. I think that will be fine. Let's see if it actually works out though. I'm guessing that we're probably not going to one-hit KO the Dragonairs with the Ice Punch just because of how weak our special attack is. So we might have to YOLO into some sort of other strategy, even a headbutt strategy, in order to try to get through here, but we'll see if it actually works or not. And sure enough, even on the Dragonair just before Claire, it was a 2-hit KO with the Ice Punch, and it wasn't even close. It was like 60% damage with the first Ice Punch, which tells me that we're probably going to struggle a little bit here. I'm going to have to get a Paralyzed Cure Berry on. We're going to just have to see how this fight actually goes. Now, of course, Dynamic Punch is our strongest same type move at this point, and if we can land it, it probably does massive damage given our higher attack stat, so I will test that as well, but I'm going to go for the Ice Punch strats first just to see if I can manage to get through. So Claire attempt number 1, we Ice Punch on the first Dragonair, doing just a little over half. We get the Thunder Wave, of course, but we can knock this Pokemon out after that. We get to level 44 right here. We could learn Detect. I'm going to skip this move though. I don't think we need it. It's a TM anyway if we want to learn it later. So we will Ice Punch the second Dragonair. It does paralyze me. Dragon Breath doesn't do a lot though, so we do take that Pokemon down. Third Dragonair comes out. Once again, Dragon Breath, and we're going to need a 2-hit KO on that Pokemon. That brings us to the Kingdra. This is where I think we switch into a fighting type move. Apparently I have no PP in Dynamic Punch though. That's pretty bad. Still, Kingdra goes for the Hyper Beam here, allowing me to hit a bunch of Mach Punches. It still knocks me out in the end, so we probably do need the Dynamic Punch for the greater power. I'm going to reset here, recover PP, and try this again. So round 2, we do get back to the Kingdra. I'm going to go for Dynamic Punch this time. I was on lower HP though, so Hyper Beam did end me in this one. We're gonna have to try this again. Here, I'm gonna try a Dynamic Punch on the Dragonair just to see what it does. It does get a 1-hit KO, so if we just YOLO and hit the Dynamic Punches here, we can get through these Pokemon that way. I just wanted to test it and see what kind of range we would get. We've run out of Dynamic Punches at this point, so I think we go Ice Punch here and hope for a freeze on the Kingdra. I think that's the only way that we win, so we're just going to reset there. But it is worth noting that if we go for the Dynamic Punch and we hit, we can effectively get a free win on one of these Dragonairs. So I'm going to try to do that on the first Dragonair since it's the most obvious one. Then we can switch to Ice Punch on the second Dragonair. We get a Thunder Wave miss, so that's perfectly fine. I think we can get to the Kingdra on full health this time. We get a Dragon Breath, so just a little bit of spite damage, but we still managed to get to Kingdra on really good HP. We missed the first Dynamic Punch. We missed the second Dynamic Punch. That's the real problem here. We're just not managing to hit. Kingdra goes Hyper Beam and ends me. If it had hit itself in confusion, we would have had a legit chance. If we had hit the first Dynamic Punch, we would have had a legit chance. So we're just gonna have to try this one again. It looks like we might be best off going for like one damaging move on that Kingdra and then going for the Dynamic Punch after that as our strategy to try to get through that one. So I'm going to go Mach Punch first intentionally and then try to Dynamic Punch, because if I do land, I think I could KO the Kingdra from this level of HP. And sure enough, I do. I get through on the 5th attempt with no damage. So it is possible to beat Clair. It's not super consistent, but it does ultimately work out. And the best strategy there is to go for something like Mach Punch once and then Dynamic Punch. Yes, she can go Smokescreen. Yes, she can, attack you, whatever. But if you do manage to connect, you will actually get the victory. That's all we're asking for there. So we'll take it and move on in the game. So here we're going to just come tell these old guys what we figured out about punching dragons. They didn't quite catch that, so we're going to have to tell them again. But with that, we're ready to move on in this challenge. The big difference for Hitmonchan, of course, is that when it does get to Lance at the end of this entire section, we can learn elemental punches. We could go an Ice Punch and Thunder Punch strategy so that we have super effective moves for a lot of his Pokemon. I mean, the 4x super effectiveness should mostly overcome our low special attack stat. So it's really just the Pokemon that we're only 2x super effective against that we have to worry about, especially that Aerodactyl. But if we can use agility to outspeed Aerodactyl and hit something like Dynamic Punch there, I think we have a legit chance of getting the victory. So we're going to have to see how it goes. Obviously, we've got to get through Willy Boy before that, and that is not a guaranteed victory by any means. But, we'll test everything and see how it actually works out when we get there. For now, though, we've got to go take on the rival. He leads off with the Sneasel, which should be super easy. Then he's going to send out the Golbat. That's where I think the Ice Punch is going to come into play. And then we're going to have to see what we can do when we get to the Haunter later on. Since we're not going to deal a lot of damage, we're going to have to get to that Pokemon with decent HP in order to have a chance. At some point, Mach Punch might even come off of the moveset in order to just have a stronger move like Return, for example, as a way to get through some of these Pokemon. Obviously, it won't help us against Ghosts. We're just going to be stuck with things like Elemental Punches for Ghosts or going for the Hidden Power Dark, which isn't ideal, but we'll just have to test a lot of different things. It would be great if this Pokemon could learn a ground type move other than just Mud Slap. Something like, Earthquake or Dig would be amazing. Unfortunately, we don't get that, so we're going to have to win with what we've got. Still, we've made it to the rival, so let's see if we can get this victory. So Rival 5 attempt number 1, I'm going to lead off with the Mach Punch on the Sneasel. That's an easy one-hit KO. Golbat comes out next. We can Ice Punch. We do not get the freeze. We get confused right here. We hit ourselves in confusion once. We hit ourselves in confusion again. So we're going down on that attempt. It might be worth it to go for a Bitter Berry here instead of the Paralyzed Cure Berry. So next attempt, when we get to the Golbat, if it goes Confused Ray this time, we will be able to recover with the Bitter Berry, and then we can simply knock that out in 2 hits. That brings out the Kadabra. We don't have anything great here. Kadabra does have much lower defense, so I think there's a chance that even going for Dynamic Punch is the best play. It disables Dynamic Punch, but we can see even Mach Punch does 50% there. We get through that Pokemon with no damage. Meganium comes out. We can go for the Ice Punch here as it reflects against me. This is going to be a 3-hit KO, but we freeze it, so we take it down nice and easy. That brings out the Haunter. We're going Ice Punch. It goes Curse. We can simply Ice Punch that Pokemon down from there. That brings us to the final Magneton. We can Mach Punch right here, and that gets the KO. So we managed to beat the Rival on the second attempt. Bitter Berry seems to be the correct play to get that one to go. We might also need Bitter Berries when we get into the league, so we should keep that in mind as a strategy against Pokemon that like to confuse us. But at the end of the day, hey, we've gotten all the way to the league with our Hitmonchan. I think that Will is going to be really tough for this Pokemon. We might need some status in order to get that to work. I'm pretty sure we're fast enough that maybe with a freeze on the first Xatu plus an agility, we'll just be able to outspeed everything at the worst case scenario, but we might be able to outspeed everything on Willy Boy's team just naturally. So it's really just going to come down to what their move choices are. We can learn a move like Thief, which would be super effective, though not super strong. The same is true with the move Hidden Power Dark. There's a lot of Pokemon that might go for the Hidden Power Dark against Willy Boy specifically, since that would technically be their best move in the fight. If we can get through Will, I think we've at least got chances against Koga. We should be able to beat Bruno because, I mean, he's Bruno. Then Karen's going to be hard, and Lancey Boy is going to be kind of dependent on how good our elemental punches turn out to be there. Still, Hitmonchan, it's to the doorsteps of the league. It's ready to move on. So let's check in next on our Hitmontop. So Hitmontop is coming in with Dig, Counter, Swift, and Rolling Kick. No setup moves here, but that may be just fine. We're going to learn Agility at level 37, so we might forget a move in order to learn that. And then we get Detect at level 43. Yet again, I'll probably skip that move since it isn't like a move that we're going to be super crazy excited about. And then we don't have a lot of coverage, but the Dig will help a lot with Ghosts here. So we do have that advantage. Let's see if it's enough to get us through this section easily. Obviously, we still have to deal with the Golbats. Those are the real problems for these Hitmons. Anytime there's a Golbat in front of you, you feel kind of bad with this Pokemon. Still, for now, I think we'll make it through all these random rockets without any major issues, but let's just see how this actually goes. And with no issues, we make it to the Rocket Executive at the top, Mr. Marlboro Man. Let's see how he goes against the Dig strats. I think that's going to be the best move for these Pokemon. Let's just see if we can get the victory or not. Maybe he goes Boom while we're underground. So sure enough, I'm just going to dig on the first Coughing. It goes for Smokescreen. We do not get the one-hit KO. That is kind of bad. Still, we managed to knock that Pokemon out, but that kind of puts us in a bind getting the poison. We might actually want a Poison Cure Berry here on the basis that the chip damage is going to do a lot while we're underground. We do manage to critical hit and one-shot one of the Coughings at least, but the fact that Dig is only 60 power is really affecting us. We're going to have to try this one again. This time we do manage to get through the Wheezing, though we do have one accuracy drop. I'm going to replace Counter with the move Agility. I think this is the way to go. I think we still want Swift to deal damage to flying types. Dig is too important for Ghost. Rolling Kick is too important for same type coverage. But I don't know, maybe we forget Swift on the basis that Counter can be really good against anything that's using physical attacks against us, as long as we can tank them. I'm thinking about that Golbat. It goes Wing Attack. We might just be able to counter in one shot. So I'm actually going to switch this up. I'm going to forget Swift, and I'm going to learn Agility. We can always learn another normal type move if we really need to. That's my logic. We'll see if it actually works out or if I get completely wrecked from this decision. But for now, we just need to finish off this Rocket Executive right here. And sure enough, we do get through on this attempt. So we do manage to progress with our Hitmontop. I'm going to see if the counter strat will get me through the Rival's Golbat. Obviously, we have to take a hit from the Golbat, but I don't see any way that we would one-shot that Pokemon with our moveset. I don't think there's a move that we can learn that will one-shot. I don't think Return would even do it with Max Friendship. I could be wrong, but I just get the feeling that we're not going to deal that much damage. I mean, Hitmontop is much more balanced than, say, a Hitmonlee. If we were Hitmonlee, I'd be like, yeah, go Return. That's probably the best play. But yeah, we're just going to try this. Let's see how we do against the Rival. So Rival 4 attempt number 1, let's go for the counter strat and see if it can work. It goes Confuse Ray against me. I hit myself in confusion. Then it goes Wing Attack and counter does good damage, but it's not like this is a one-hit KO. So that is a problem. We might not actually be able to go for the counter strat here. It might just be that we're too fragile to actually make this work. Let's try this again. So here I have put on the Bitter Berry to avoid confusion. We're really hoping that he just goes Wing Attack, allows me to knock him out from there. Of course, he has to go for the confusion again, but we do knock him out in 2 turns, so that's perfectly fine. That brings us to the Meganium. We miss our turn, so we didn't get the chance to actually do any meaningful damage there. We're going to have to try this again. I think it's just random with the Golbat going for the Confuse Ray here, though. It can just go Wing Attack, and that's what we're actually looking for to get the victory here. When we get that, now we can get to the Meganium and go for the Rolling Kick. This looks like a 3-hit KO, but we do take that Pokemon down this time. Haunter comes out, and I came into this fight with no Dig PP. Are you kidding me? We're gonna have to reset just because of that. I'm gonna have to make sure to save after recovering PP this time. Let's try again. So back to the Haunter. We're on very low health, but we go Dig, and that will be enough to get through that Pokemon. That brings out the Magnemite. We can go Dig here as well since it's 100% accurate. Knock that Pokemon out. The problem is that this Sneasel knows Quick Attack, and there's nothing we can do about it if we get there on low health. So we're gonna have more HP than that when we get to the end of the fight. This time we get through the Meganium with more HP thanks to a critical hit. Now we can once again Dig on the Haunter. We do not get the one-hit KO this time though. That brings out Sneasel. We can go for the Rolling Kick, and that does get the one-hitter there though. And we can Rolling Kick on the Magnemite, destroying that Pokemon. So in the end we do win, but Dig did not do as much as I thought it would do against the Haunter, and we got kind of lucky on that fight. I'm not gonna lie. Counter just might not be worth it. We might be better off going for something else like a Return here. That is what it is. For now, we're going to move on. Let's get through these randos and make our way up to the final Rocket Executive. And sure enough, we had a reset against this Rocket here with just a random Golbat. So I do think that it's the correct play to learn a physical move here that can just hit normally. For now, I'm just going to go for Strength. I think that makes perfect sense here with this Pokemon. We'll learn it over counter and we'll just move on with this setup. So here when we get to the Executive with the Golbat, I misclicked and used Dig. Oh no. Here we'll go Strength instead. We see it does about half, so this is going to be a 2-hit KO. It's the same as having to get hit 2 times to use counter, except for the fact that we get a move first. So going for Strength is just the better play there. Clearly going for the counter strat was just me being silly. Take that for what you will. For now, we're going to just beat up on these last 2 Executives, and then we can make our way on to Clair. And of course, we make it to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni with no issues. So against his Houndour, we're just going to go for the Rolling Kick. We miss and get hit by Ember, but we knock it out the next turn. That brings out the Coughing. We can go Dig against this Pokemon. It tries to Sludge. We don't get the one-hit KO, but Strength will finish that Pokemon off. And that brings out the Houndoom. We can go for Rolling Kick and miss. It misses Smog, and then we just knock it out the next turn. So we do get the victory. It's not super pretty. I'm not sure how we're actually going to do in the Dragon type gym here, given that we don't have great moves. We could always forget Strength to learn Max Friendship Return if we get really desperate, but that's going to be like our last ditch effort to get through this one. I think we should be able to get through without it, but let's just see if it actually works out or not. Now, we did not one-shot the Dragonair just before Clair. The one advantage that we have here, though, is that with this Hitmontop, we do have the ability to flinch with Rolling Kick. So that could be our strategy. We might might just rolling kick twice on the Dragonairs, hoping that we get the flinch. Obviously, rolling kick into strength is probably the highest accuracy play here, with still keeping that flinch chance intact. We could also go for a headbutt strat if we really want to. We could just forget the strength and learn headbutt. I'm going to try everything here, but let's just see how this fight actually goes. So Clair attempt number 1, we're leading off with rolling kick right here. It does over half. We get the flinch that we wanted. We can just use strength after that to knock out that first Dragonair. Second Dragonair comes out. We hit the rolling kick and flinch again. So we can simply knock that one out with a strength. Third Dragonair comes out. Rolling kick. It misses the Thunder Wave. So we just knock it out from there. And now we've made it to the Kingdra. I'm going rolling kick. It goes for smoke screen against me. I've run out of rolling kick PP because I didn't recover PP coming in. So I'm going strength here, but it's just a 3-hit KO. We beat Clair on the first attempt with no real issues. Turns out when you throw big boulders at Clair, she just can't do anything. I mean, she's got all these boulders inside of her gym, basically to prove the fact that dragons can't really stand up to boulders. Clearly, Chuck, he would have great chances in that gym, but unfortunately, he's just not smart enough to come here and fight against Clair. I do think we found the next biggest punter in the game after both Chuck and Pryce at the end of the day, because she does give you so many opportunities to win with her random, Thunder Wave strats and trying to get all cutesy with her strategies, and then just trying to say that you didn't legitimately beat her, like that 8-year-old on the playground. Every time they lose a game, it's always the game cheated. Oh man, still we'll take it. We're just clearly going to easily win here and move on in the game. I'm not sure if we're even going to make the Lance with this Pokemon though. I've just got to be honest. I don't know that we've got enough to get through Will, Koga, and Karen to even get to Lance. And even when we get to Lance, we might not be good enough to actually progress with this Pokemon. We're going to have to see. For now though, we can make our way to the rival. Let's just see if we can get an easy victory there. Maybe that will build a little confidence going into the Willy Boy fight. Maybe we can find a way through Will, but I'm just gonna say right now, I think this is a Pokemon that has a high possibility of not actually being able to progress, because I'm just not sure what we're actually going to use against Will. We don't have any stats that like stand out as amazing compared to a lot of other Pokemon, so I'm just not sure if we're gonna deal enough damage when we get there, but we'll find out. This could certainly be a Pokemon that ends up burning all of its rare candies to try to get through the league though, so that is a possibility as well. Keep in mind, there are like 7 rare candies available for the league. So even if we drop them right now, we would be getting to level 52. That would be pretty decent for the league, but we'll just have to see how it goes. First things first, we've got to take on our rival. Let's see if we can get the victory in this fight. So Rival 5 attempt number 1, we go rolling kick on the Sneasel and get the 1-hit KO. Out comes Golbat, we'll go strength. The critical hit one-shots that Pokemon. Kadabra comes out, we can go strength again, 1-hit KOing that Pokemon. That will bring out the Meganium. I'm going for the rolling kick because we can get flinches. Instead, we get a crit, so we 2-shot there. We'll now go dig on the Haunter and not get the 1-hit KO, but it curses, so that's perfectly fine by me. And then Magneton, dig is 4 times super effective, and we're not going to go down to the curse in that turn, so we simply get the victory right there, and we're ready to move on to the league with all of the Hitmons. They're all perfectly fine to get to this point in the game, and with that, it's all about Willy Boy up next. Hidden Power Dark almost certainly comes in on this Pokemon. We probably forget strength for that, but who knows, maybe it's just too weak and we're better off going for max power return, so we'll test that out in the next section. There's also the possibility of going for Mint Berry with rest strats in order to just get a free heal in the middle of a fight. That's always a possibility with our Pokemon as we go forward here. So we do have to keep that kind of cheesy strat in mind as well. But like I said, I think this is a Pokemon that could end up burning all of its rare candies trying to get through the league. That could be fine though if it has agility and curse for the post game. That could be the strategy, is just agility, curse, and then go for, like 1 damage dealing move effectively and try to sweep through enemy teams. So we'll see how it actually works out. But for now, hey, Hitmontop, it makes it to the league, and we have finished our 3 fighting type Pokemon. So coming back to our results so far, 80 Pokemon have now legitimately gotten through Clair with no issues whatsoever. Like, consider that's a third of the Pokedex at this point when you include the struggle Pokemon down there that have managed to simply crush this section of the game with no issues. Not a single fail on Clair so far. I think we're going to keep that going, but let's get into our normal types. We've got Lickitung, we've got Kangaskhan, we've got to see how they go. Lickitung is kind of slow, so that could put it at a disadvantage. We're just going to have to see. Let's test this out. Now, coming back with our Lickitung, we managed to finish the last section with Headbutt, Mudslap, Rollout, and Defense Curl on the moveset. We were holding the Quick Claw because of how insanely slow this Pokemon is, but I think this moveset is enough to get us through the next section. So we're going to get into this and test it out by going to the Rocket storyline here. I think that the Rollout strats will be enough to get us through a lot of opponents as well as Stab Headbutt, but let's just see how this actually goes. And sure enough, without any major issues, we make it to the Marlboro Man. We're ready to try to take this fight on. I think we go for the Defense Curl Rollout here. Let's see how this actually works out. So Marlboro Man attempt number 1, I'm going straight for a Defense Curl here. We get Tackle from the first Coughing. That's perfectly fine. This is going to end up being a 3-hit KO though, and then we miss. So we're going to have to change up our strategy here. We can go Headbutt, which looks like a simple 2-hitter on these Coughings. Of course, when we start getting accuracy drops together with Poison, we might actually lose this attempt. Still, we managed to get to the Wheezing. We are faster than this Pokemon, funny enough. We just miss at the beginning. In fact, it turns out that we're in a speed tie and Sludge eventually takes us down. We're gonna have to try this one again. So we can go for a bunch of Defense Curls in order to reduce damage from the opponents, since they do seem to like to go for the smoke screens on me here, meaning they're gonna get a lot of hits. We make it back to Wheezing this time. It's not doing that much damage, and we do Headbutt it down. We get a level up. We could learn Slam here. I'm gonna skip the move. I don't think it's worth it when we already have Headbutt, and Slam's really inaccurate. So we'll simply skip that move and move on in this fight. We managed to knock out the second to last Coughing. We're about to run out of PP in the Headbutt here though. So I'm going to try to get this Coughing down on HP and then Headbutt it down. And we do manage to get through on that second attempt there against the Marlboro Man. Not super consistent, unfortunately, but we'll see if we can manage to get a more consistent fight against the rival in the basement. This is one of those situations where we might just want to set up really hard with Defense Curl at the start of the fight against the first Golbat, especially if we get confused. But as soon as we snap out of confusion, we can start going for the Rollout strats, and maybe that allows us to simply sweep through the team. Let's test it and find out. So here I'm going to give a Bitter Berry just in case we get confused. Let's see how this actually works out. So Rival 4 attempt number 1, I'm leading off with the Defense Curl here, and then we will go into the Rollout on the Golbat. It's super effective. We get the Confuse Ray, but we knock it out after the Bitter Berry just simply heals us. Magnemite is going to be a 2-hit KO and it misses Thunder Wave, so that's perfectly fine. Haunter comes out, we can destroy that Pokemon, so we're going to move on to the Sneasel. Here I went for Rollout and missed. It hits Feint Attack. Rollout is going to take 2 hits here to take this Pokemon down, but we do get the victory, and that brings out Meganium. Razor Leaf simply ends me because I missed and took too much curse damage. We're going to have to try this one again. Next attempt plays out pretty much the same as we get to the Sneasel. We once again miss here, and we're going to be on low health going to the Meganium. We would need a Quick Claw, and even then I'm not sure if we one-shot there, so we're going to have to reset yet again. We really need a Quick Claw on that Haunter. That would be the ideal way to get through that Pokemon. This time we managed to hit the Sneasel with the first Rollout at least though, so we do get through to the Meganium on about half health. It goes Reflect right here, which is definitely a good strategy. Razor Leaf hits, but we survive, and with that we do manage to finally beat the rival with the Rollout strats. The Defense Curl Rollout is definitely our strongest setup there against a lot of those Pokemon, but it is fairly inconsistent on the basis that we're so slow next to everything. We really want that Quick Claw to activate, and if we don't have the Quick Claw, we can be in bad shape there. Still, we managed to get through. I think we can beat up on all these randos without any major issues, so let's just get through them and get to the end of this section. And fortunately, with no issues, we make it to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni at the end of this section, so let's just see if we roll out all over his Pokemon and get an easy victory. First up, he's got the Houndour out. I'm just going to Defense Curl here. He goes Bite. That doesn't really matter. Rollout just destroys that Pokemon. Coughing comes out next and gets destroyed. That brings out the Houndoom. It goes Feint Attack. We hit Rollout, and that ends the fight. Very easy victory there. And just like that, we're ready to move on to Clair's gym. Now, Clair is the spot we could replace Headbutt with something like Ice Punch. We do technically have slightly better special attack than physical attack, so that's kind of interesting with this Pokemon, and the Ice Punch would be a very strong move there. Or we could just stick with this Defense Curl rollout strat, going in with some sort of Paralyzed Cure Berry strategy to try to get through those Pokemon with that setup. The big issue here is the fact that we are so slow. We're going to be slower than the Dragonairs, and that makes me think we're just going to be exposed to too much chance of getting wrecked by their Thunder Waves, especially if we're trying to do a multi-turn move like Rollout. So Headbutt's probably a good start. If Headbutt doesn't work, we'll change into Ice Punch there and just see how that actually works out. We could even go Blizzard if we get really desperate in this section of the game. Now, we do have to save in the gym because even against these first Dratinis, they love to go for Thunder Wave and then go for the Dragon Rage. And there's a decent chance we could get wrecked here because we're not one-hit KOing. So we're going to need some luck. Maybe we can get a range where we knock these Pokemon out in a single hit. It does not work on that first attempt, though. That obviously opens up the possibility of even going for something like Strength here, but I'm going to lead off with the Ice Punch and just see what that does for me when I throw that on over Headbutt. Ice Punch here, of course, is super effective, so it's going to one-shot these Dratinis. And with that, we'll at least have a chance of taking down the Dragonairs later on. Maybe it will work out. I'm honestly not sure. I'm going to skip the move Screech at this point because I don't think I'm survivable enough to use it. But let's just see how we actually do through the rest of this section. On the Dragonair just before Clair, we see that Ice Punch is not a one-hit KO there. So there is a decent chance that we will end up going for Blizzard here to try to get through this next fight. I'm going to try a bunch of different strategies, and I'm going to lead off with the Paralyzed Cure Berry strategy, just giving that to see if it's enough to get me through this fight with something like Defense Curl plus Rollout. Let's test this and find out. So Clair attempt number one, I'm going to Ice Punch the first Dragonair, trying to get a freeze. We don't get it here, but it goes Surf after that, so that's perfectly fine. We can get to level 44 as the second Dragonair comes out. It goes for Thunderbolts, and we're going to be able to knock this one out with no issues. That will bring out the third Dragonair. Ice Beam hits. We get the freeze right here. This is where I'm going to set up my Defense Curl, and then I'm going to go Rollout on this Pokemon to knock it out. Kingdra comes out next. It hits Surf, dealing massive damage, and I missed the Rollout, so I simply lose right there. Let's try this one again. So this time I'm going to knock out the first Dragonair with Rollout. We get a Thunder Wave miss from the second Dragonair, then it hits, but we still manage to take it down. Out comes the third Dragonair. It misses the Thunder Wave. We KO it. We've made it to the Kingdra on high green health, and it misses a smoke screen, and we just one-shot with the Rollout. So it turns out that the Defense Curl Rollout can work there. It's a little bit yellow. You do need some misses and or heals of the paralysis from Thunder Wave, but that's something we've seen previously in this series work plenty of times. And just like that, we are able to beat Clair in just a couple attempts, so really not too bad. It seems like the Ice Punch into Rollout is the best strategy on that first Dragonair, so just take that for what you will, because after that, you can build up enough to just sweep through the rest of the team. With that, however, we're ready to just get through these last couple randos, and we can make our way over to the Rival, where I think we've got a decent shot of getting through him with this Lickitung. We might replace the Ice Punch with something else, though I think Defense Curl Rollout is going to be our primary strategy with the Quick Claw on as our held item. But with that, we're ready to make our way to the Rival with this Lickitung, and I think we're set up pretty well here if we can get through him against the entire league, just because we have so much flexibility with elemental punches, with normal type moves, etc. I think that we'll just simply be able to find a solution for opponents as long as we get the right Quick Claw luck. I don't think that a lot of these fights are going to be super easy by any means, but I do think that they're going to be possible with enough resets within what we could basically call reasonable. But we'll just have to see. Maybe something completely destroys this Lickitung as we go forward. Bruno's going to get a lot of chances to hit us with fighting type moves. That could be the end of it. I honestly don't know. Now at this point, we can pick up the Earthquake TM, which could be useful. I'm going to try to avoid it for right now, though it could be the solution for things like Magneton and for the Haunter on the Rivals team, so we'll just keep that in mind as we go through this one. Still, let's just see if we can manage to beat Rival number 5 or not. First up, he's got the Sneasel. I'm going to use this opportunity to Defense Curl. Then we will go Rollout. It's going to be a 2-hitter on this Pokemon, and we missed the second Rollout. Fortunately, it also missed Fury Cutter, so that's perfectly fine. We get Wing Attack from the Golbat, and we miss the Rollout again. Otherwise, this is a 2-hit KO. We even get another miss on that Pokemon. That brings us to the Magneton, and we're not built up at all, so we're in kind of bad shape here, and I'm pretty sure we're losing this attempt. Haunter comes out and curses me. I do manage to knock that Pokemon out. Rollout does defeat the Kadabra as we level up right here. Meganium comes out and we just miss the 1-hit KO there. I'm pretty sure we would do just fine if we just managed to land all the rollouts. So let's try this one again. So once again on the Sneasel, we're just going Defense Curl Rollout. We miss Rollout again there. So we're just getting really bad luck with that 90% accuracy. As they say, if it's 90% accurate, that's equivalent to being 50% accurate. But this time we are sweeping all the way through the Magneton with the Rollout without any misses. So we're doing a lot better this time. We miss Rollout here on Kadabra, unfortunately. It gets to use Future Sight, and we miss again and go down to the Curse. We need no misses from Rollout in this run if we're going to actually win. This time we've gotten a good range with the Rollout up to the Kadabra. We hit the first Rollout here. We hit the second one, so that Pokemon goes down. Out comes Meganium. We hit the Rollout. We don't get the 1-hitter. It goes Reflect. We get hit by Future Sight, but we do in fact win at that point. So in the end, you can get the victory there with the Defense Curl Rollout strats. It's not like perfectly consistent, but certainly good enough to justify going for it. And I think Defense Curl Rollout's going to do pretty well for us until we get to Bruno. I think that this strategy will be enough. I think we have enough bulk to get through the Will fight, at least with the right Quick Claw luck. I think that we can find ways through Koga because we can throw on something like Fire Punch in order to get through the Fortress and probably just find a way through the rest of the team with a move like Rollout. It's when we get to Bruno, though, that our slow speed plus our weakness to the fighting type might actually do us in. So we're just going to have to test that when we get there. But for now, hey, we've gotten through with this Kangaskhan. It's moving on to the league. So that, of course, will bring us to Kangaskhan next. We're coming in with Headbutt, Fire Punch, Bite, and Mud Slap, a pretty good wide set of moves. Obviously, we prefer to be a physical attacker, but we also have the advantage here that we're much faster than what we were just looking at with that Lickitung. So I think we're going to have a much better chance here, especially with some headbutt strats in order to get through some opponents. Let's make our way to the Rocket storyline and just see how this Pokemon goes. Of course, with no issues, we make it to the Marlboro Man. I think our moveset currently is more than enough for this, but let's see how it actually works out. So here, attempt number 1 on the Marlboro Man, we're just going to go for the headbutt on this Coughing. It's a 2-hit KO. We get a smoke screen. It's not the end of the world. We can hopefully just hit through that. And even something like Fire Punch should do pretty decent damage here. We do get poisoned by the second Coughing, and the third Coughing is whittling us down a little bit. I'm going to go Fire Punch just to see what it does to the Wheezing. Definitely headbutt is the way to go there. We just go down to the poison. So we're going to have to try this one again. Obviously, a big part of that last one was being on a timer from the poison, though. When we don't get that, we should be able to headbutt these Pokemon down. We do get through the Coughing this time. We could learn Endure. I'm going to skip the move. I don't think we need it. And instead, we can go for a headbutt here on this second to last Coughing. We're just missing a ton of times here. I'm going to switch to the Fire Punch on the final Coughing as we do get poisoned from this one, but it's a 2-hitter, so we do ultimately manage to get through. As much as he tried to cheese with all of the smoke screens and everything, the Marlboro Man, he's just not really that great at the end of the day. He did get a victory, so I guess I can't dog on him too much, but you know, fake wannabe cowboy up there is just not quite going to get the job done. Anyway, with that being done, let's make our way down to the basement. Let's fight against the Rival. I'm going to stick with my moveset as it is for now and just see how this goes. We could switch into something like Ice Punch just because it would make a lot of sense going through this section instead of the Fire Punch. But for now, I think we can get through just as we are, but let's test it and find out. So first up, we've got the Golbat out, and I've apparently not healed. So we're going to have to reset right there to make sure that we get full PP in our moves. And after that, we can now go for the Headbutt on the Golbat. This is a 2-hit KO. It goes Confuse Ray, but I knock it out the next turn. That brings out the Magnemite. If we can actually move, we're going to go for the Fire Punch here. We unfortunately get paralyzed because we were confused. That brings out the Haunter. We can bite this Pokemon if we actually manage to move yet again. Unfortunately, we're failing to move over and over again, so we're taking massive damage, and that basically guarantees we lose this one. The Sneasel can just go for anything and knock us out. Let's try this again, hoping not to get that bad luck. This time we flinch the Golbat, so we don't have to worry about any status there. Fire Punch will just destroy the Magnemite this time. Haunter comes out and we can bite it, doing about half, and then it flinches from there, so we simply knock it out with no damage taken. Sneasel comes out, we'll go back to the Fire Punch. It's going to be a 2-hit KO. Headbutt might be just as strong here. Sure enough, it is. And that brings us to the Meganium at the end. I'm just going to headbutt this Pokemon. We get the flinch and we easily win. So when we don't get confused and hit ourselves in confusion, that's just an insanely easy fight. It's only because of the confusion that we had trouble there. And with that, we should have a very easy time getting through the rest of these randos. So with that, I'm just going to destroy them easily and make my way up to the final Rocket Executive. And sure enough, we make it to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni with no issues. So let's just see how we actually manage to get through this fight. I think Headbutt is enough, but let's find out. First up against the Houndour, I'm just going to headbutt this Pokemon, getting an easy 1-hit KO victory. Coughing comes out next. This is a 2-hitter. We get hit by Sludge, but even Mud Slap can just finish that Pokemon off. That brings out the Houndoom. It doesn't have great defense, but it still survives one headbutt here. We have to go for the Mud Slap to finish it off. Still, that was a super easy fight. No problems getting through that, and we're ready to move on to Clair. I think in this next gym, we just simply use Elemental Punches to get through anything tough, and then against the Kingdra, we can probably just spam away with the headbutt, and that's probably enough to get us through there. Now, on the first fight inside of Clair's gym, I get a level up and learn Dizzy Punch. And just because this move is kind of unique to this Pokemon and it's effectively the same power as using the headbutt, I think I'm going to learn this move. We could always just throw headbutt back on if we decide we don't want it, but I'm kind of interested to see how Dizzy Punch strats will go as we go through this section. Of course, it allows us to confuse our opponents, something that I don't believe it did in Gen 1. So it's kind of interesting to see how good this move turns out to be if we can just get some confusion on our opponents that way. Now, of course, it's not strong enough to one-shot there against a Dragonair, which makes me think going for the Ice Punch is probably the way to go here. So I think I'm going to replace Fire Punch with Ice Punch, and let's just see if that's enough to get us through this section. So here, Clair attempt number 1. I'm going to go for the Ice Punch on this first Dragonair. We see it only does about half, so our normal type moves are definitely stronger here than going for the Ice Punch. The only benefit of Ice Punch is that it can freeze our opponents, but we just lose on that first attempt because the Ice Punch wasn't strong enough. Still, let's just test this again and see. Maybe we can find a way to get through with the Dizzy Punch strats, or maybe we need to upgrade to a stronger normal type move, and that's actually the best play. Let's find out. Next attempt, we get through the first Dragonair without any status. The second Dragonair also misses Thunder Wave. We've got the Paralyzed Cure Berry on here as we get to the third Dragonair, so even when it goes for the Thunder Wave, we're simply going to knock it out after that. That brings us to the final Kingdra on full health. We hit Dizzy Punch. It hits Smoke Screen. We hit Dizzy Punch again, taking it to very low health. She's got a Hyper Potion here, I believe. That's going to allow us to get a couple more hits here. Surf is doing a lot of damage, and we don't quite get the range to KO. We're just barely surviving, though, and we hit an Ice Punch to finish it. So we actually beat Clair with 2 HP remaining. It turns out that you can cheese her with all that Thunder Wave spam that she does and find a way through that fight. She's going to be very angry that we got through with only 2 HP remaining. She's definitely calling hacks on this one, but we're going to go explain it to the old guys that, you know, she needed to get a better damage roll there. There's a thing called a range in the world of Pokemon, and she did not get the range she was looking for. So just like that, we get a move on. And just like that, after humiliating Clair, we're ready to make our way out of here. We can go take our shot at Rival 5 and make our way to the league, where Kangaskhan Kangaskhan fortunately has a lot of good TM coverage, so I think it's got decent chances when we actually get to the league. Of course, we're going to want to mostly use physical moves, but that shouldn't be a big deal when we've got stab normal moves, we've got dynamic punch, we've got earthquake, we've got shadow ball, which is a physical move, and we've got the special coverage that we need when we do run into something like a fortress where we're going to want a fire punch in that specific spot. So I think we're going to have a pretty good chance of getting through the league with this Pokemon. We'll have to test it out and see, but I'm fairly confident that we're getting through Lancey Boy with this one. Obviously, I have done one full game run with Kangaskhan in the past in this generation. That was the frustration only run where we used foresight and frustration for the entire run in order to get through. And obviously we got a same type attack bonus in frustration, so that was pretty nice. And because of the fact that we had access to foresight, it was ultimately possible to beat the game with only that move, which was nuts. Granted, that was nowhere near minimum battles, but still, it shows that this Pokemon is pretty darn good. And I'm sure if we give it the full gamut of its moveset, it's going to be pretty unstoppable. That's my prediction right now, at least. We're going to see how it goes, though, starting with Rival 5 right here. So here against the Sneasel, I'm just going to go for the Dizzy Punch on this Pokemon that gets a one-hit KO. Golbat comes out next. I still think Dizzy Punch is the play. This is going to be a two-hitter. We get confused. We hit ourselves in confusion and get a wing attack. We hit ourselves again and get another wing attack. 3 times in a row we hit ourselves before we finally get a move and knock that Pokemon out. That brings us to the Magneton. It's going to be a 2-hit KO here with the Mud Slap. We do get Thunder Waved even after the Mud Slap there, unfortunately. That basically is going to end this first attempt as we're fully paralyzed and cursed by the Haunter. Let's try this one again. I think we can get through with just a little bit better luck. So back to the Golbat this time. We'll confuse it with the Dizzy Punch. That's going to allow us to simply knock that Pokemon out, still on full health. Magneton comes out. We can go for the Mud Slap here. It misses the Thunder Wave. That's what we wanted to see, and now we get through that Pokemon just fine. We're going to bite the Haunter. A critical hit takes it down in a single hit. We can bite against the Kadabra. This is going to be a 2-hitter. Dizzy Punch is probably a 1-hit KO there. That's probably the correct play. But with that, we've made it to Meganium. We'll Dizzy Punch, doing about half. It goes for the Reflect, so I'm going to switch into Ice Punch. We don't quite get the KO, but Razor Leaf doesn't do enough, so we easily get through on the second attempt against the Rival. Once you manage to not get paralyzed and confused for like 3 turns in a row, you're basically good to go to get through that fight. I think in the next fight, we just throw on Shadow Ball, and that's probably our solution to Willy Boy. We can try with a normal physical move first, just to see, but otherwise Shadow Ball as a physical super effective move will synergize well with our stats and be enough, I think, to take most of his Pokemon down pretty easily. And we should outspeed basically everything at this point. When we get to Koga, we'll have enough moves there as well, I think, to get through. Bruno is going to be the actual challenge here because of his fighting type moves. That's where we might have to cheese for like a freeze somewhere or confusion or something in order to get through some of the tougher Pokemon. And we may need to go for max power return at that point to have decent chances. We'll just find out when we get there. But for now, we have managed to progress this far with Kangaskhan, and it's ready to make its way on to the league. So with our 2 normal types out of the way, we're up to 82 Pokemon legitimately getting through this section and not looking too bad. I mean, Lickitung looks the most suspect of these, but it still gets the job done pretty reasonably. And I think the normal type is just gonna overall perform the best against the league, but we'll have to see if Bruno has anything to say about that. For now though, with those Pokemon done, we're going to get to our water types. We're gonna lead off with the Kingdra since it is the only like 3rd stage evolution Pokemon down there. Then we will go through all the other water types one by one. I think Seadra gets its action even if Kingdra failed for some reason, since it doesn't have the dragon typing and therefore won't have any weaknesses against Clair. So let's just see how this actually goes. So picking up with our Kingdra, we were running with Surf, Smokescreen, Twister, and Swift. Twister will be super effective in the next gym and same type, so I think we keep that. Obviously Surf we want. Smokescreen could go in order to learn a move like Lizard if we really need it at any point, but let's just see how we actually do with this moveset first. Our next level up move will be Agility at level 40. That could also be very interesting since we could use that to outspeed everything. We might throw that on over Smokescreen. I'm honestly not sure, but let's just test this out and see what actually works. And with no issues, of course, we make it to the Marlboro Man. I think Surf is enough for this fight, but let's just see if we sweep through all the coughings or not. So first up on the first coughing, I'm just going to go for the Surf, and that does get a one-hitter with a crit at least. Second coughing comes out and still cannot stand up to the Surf. So we're going to get through everything other than at least the Wheezing with a single hit. The Wheezing comes out fourth. We hit Surf. It's not quite a one-hitter, but it just goes for Sludge on me. I can even use Twister just to finish that Pokemon off. The next coughing will come out and simply get Surf, which is pretty easy victory here. And then we can Surf down the final coughing, completely destroying that Rocket Executive. We'll have to see if that same sort of range holds up when we come back with our Seadra later on. But for now, Kingdra has basically one hit or two hit every single Pokemon in this section and never really looked like it was going to have any issues. We'll have to see if that holds up here on the Rival. This is a spot where learning a move even like Icy Wind could make some sense against the Meganium for these water types, so we'll just have to see how this goes. For now, at least, we're neutrally affected by grass, so I think we're going to be just fine. Let's see if we get the nice, easy victory on the Rival. So rival attempt number one, he leads off with the Golbat. I go for Surf right here. We get confused. It turns out I didn't even heal coming into this fight, but we do manage to knock out the Golbat, so that's perfectly fine. We hit ourselves once in confusion against the Magnemite, but we do knock it out with a Surf. That brings out the Haunter. We hit ourselves in confusion again. It goes for Shadow Ball against me. Surf will one-hit KO that Pokemon. Sneasel comes out. We can go for another Surf, but not get the one-hitter this time, and Quick Attack ends me. Clearly, we need to be fully healed coming into this fight. We got very close to getting through even when we came in on like 2/3 health. So I think we can get the victory here. Let's try again. So here in the next attempt, we actually one-shot the Sneasel with the Surf. When we never get confused, we just managed to get through everything nice and easy. That brings us to Meganium. I've run out of PP and Surf. I think that's fine. I'm just going to spam Twister here. We could get a flinch, and this Pokemon's got even special defense and defense. We've got even attack and special attack. Technically, Swift might be a little bit stronger, but I think the flinch is the higher probability chance. Plus, it can't go Reflect against Twister, so we pretty easily get through. It's just a 4-hit KO on that Pokemon, and Razor Leaf just doesn't do enough. So we completely destroy the Rival there. We can go ahead and heal up, and then just make our way through the rest of these randos. And here we get a level up to learn Agility. I'm going to learn this move over Smokescreen for now. I think this is the way to go. I'm not sure we want to go for crazy accuracy strats. I think we'd rather be able to outspeed everything, and then we can go for flinch strats with things like Headbutt and Twister. That's my logic. Tell me if you think I'm wrong in the comment section below, but this is the way that I'm going to go for now. And sure enough, we make it to the final wannabe Giovanni at the top of the tower, and we're just going to spam the Surf here and I think get the easy victory. Let's see how it goes. Of course, he leads off with Houndour. We just go Surf and completely destroy that Pokemon. That brings out the Coughing next. Surf is an easy one-hit KO. And finally, the Houndoom never stood a chance against our Kingdra as we completely destroy it. Now, we're already at level 42. That's 2 levels higher than Claire's Kingdra, so we should have the advantage when we get there. The biggest disadvantage that we have is that we don't know Hyper Beam, whereas she does. We can only learn Hyper Beam via TM, so we're going to have to see how that goes. Granted, we could learn an Ice-type move like Icy Wind or Blizzard as a strategy to get through this next section, so we should at least keep that in mind as we go through. I'm going to try to avoid changing my moveset, but if I do need to change it, something like replacing Swift with Blizzard is what makes the most sense to me. And then against the Kingdra, we can go for the Twister as our strongest move there. Of course, she's got Dragon Breath with all of her Pokemon, so she will have super effective moves with each and every one. So we could potentially take significant damage if we can't easily knock out the Dragonairs. But I think Blizzard or Icy Wind would be a solution there if our Twister isn't doing enough for some reason. I guess if Twister's not doing enough, Icy Wind wouldn't be the play. It would have to be Blizzard, at least on the pure dragon types. But our level advantage and our max DVs should mean that we get a speed advantage on Claire's Kingdra. So we should be able to go for flinch strats with the Twister there. So let's just see how this actually works out. And here we just missed the range to get a one-hit KO on the Dragonair just before Claire with Twister, which makes me think that the Blizzard might be required here. We might just take too much damage otherwise. I'm still going to go for a Paralyzed Cure Berry just in case they do decide to go for Paralysis paralysis against me. Maybe I can use that to get the win. Keep in mind, we can also get flinches here. That could be another win condition for us. So we're just going to have to test this and see. So Clair attempt number 1, we go for Twister on the first Dragonair. We get the flinch right here. Surf can probably knock it out from there. Sure enough, it does. We get to level 44 as the second Dragonair comes out. We go Twister, getting it again to low health. We can heal against this one when it uses the Thunder Wave against us with the Paralyzed Cure Berry. That brings out the third Dragonair. Twister, it misses the Thunder Wave, so we get through that Pokemon just fine. We've made it to the final Kingdra. I'm going Twister right here. Doing about half, we get a smoke screen. She hyper potions, we hit a Twister again, and we hit again. And it turns out that we just easily win against Clair in spite of the fact that all of her Pokemon had super effective moves and none of them were one-hit KOs. She just completely couldn't stand up to a real Kingdra here. You know, her little sorry Kingdra there, wishing that it had a real trainer like us to lead it and not just completely punt on every battle. So we're going to go down here and tell these old guys in the Dragon's Den that we're the real Dragon Master here and that Clair basically needs to be retired. I mean, she's made so many complaints and excuses up to this point for her terrible, terrible performance. And she's kind of making even a guy like Chuck look halfway decent in comparison. Remember, I mean, Chuck, nobody expects anything from him. He lives like on a little island away from everybody. Clair is supposed to be this big bad 8th gym leader, and she's just kind of turning into a joke. I mean, even Whitney, who was, you know, crying in the corner after her losses, managed to beat more Pokemon than Clair has at this point. So you got to take that for what it's worth. Clair just really is looking like the sorriest trainer in this entire generation. And with that, we can make our way now to Rival 5. I think we're going to get through this fight just fine as well. And then we're on to the league with this one, where we don't really have any weaknesses is the thing. I mean, until we get to Lance and he's using Outrage with his dragons, that's the point where we might have trouble, but Blizzard is probably the solution, and I'm willing to bet we outspeed against Lance's Dragonites. Because we're a solo runner and he's a team runner, this is the problem with doing team runs, okay? Solo running is by far superior because you end up with one Pokemon that actually has good stats, and speed plus the power of a solo Pokemon is just way better than having 6 Pokemon like Lancey Boy. That's my word anyway. As we're going to make our way to the league, I think that we're going to prove that being a solo trainer with everything coming into the league at higher levels than the league members is kind of proof that they have the wrong strategy and they really need to just play minimum battles from here on out. Anyway, with that, we have made it to Rival 5. Let's see if we can get the victory with our current moveset, if we need to make any changes. I'm going to just try as I am though. Let's see if we can win or not. First up on the Sneasel, I'm just going to go Surf right here. That is an easy one-hit KO. Golbat comes out next. Surf here is not a one-hitter. We get confused by Confuse Ray, and then we hit ourselves in confusion, but we move the next turn and use Twister. That brings out the Magneton. We snap out of confusion and hit Surf to one-shot that Pokemon. Haunter comes out. We go Surf. That is another one-hit KO. Kadabra, we'll just stick with the Surf here since it's the same type, and that gets the victory there. Finally, Meganium, we're just going to spam Twister here. It goes Reflect, which means nothing against special moves. Razor Leaf crits and still doesn't do that much. So we're going to get the victory here with 59 HP. I thought it was 69 HP for a second. I was going to say very nice. Unfortunately, he did 10 HP more damage than he should have, so we don't get a stunt on him that way, but still, Kingdra, absolute beast in this section, completely destroys everything and makes it to the league. In the next fight against Willy Boy, in the worst case scenario, I think we go Hidden Power Dark and get through. Koga, we should have plenty of moves. I mean, just Stab Surf should be enough for everything on that team. I think the same is true for Bruno. I think we'll be able to get through there. Terran is going to be kind of interesting when we get there, but then when we get to Lancey Boy, I think the solution is to throw on Blizzard, and then I think we just win. That's my prediction. We'll see if it actually works out, but for now, we have made it this far, and we're ready to go into the league. So with that, we'll step down, we'll look at Seadra, we'll look at Seaking, we'll look at Starmie, and we'll look at Qwilfish, and we'll get our member pick Kabutops in. So let's just see how all these Pokemon go. So here we're going to lead off with Seadra at this point. Let's just see how it compares up to its evolved form Kingdra. We're coming in with effectively the same moveset, just we've changed out Swift for Headbutt. I don't think that's going to matter too much. We have to see what kind of damage ranges we get with our special attacks though. We are more of a special attacker with this one, so we are going to mostly want to use Surf and Twister, possibly Blizzard here. We do have the risk that one of the Dragonairs on Claire's team does know Thunderbolt, so we'll have to watch out for that. But we also don't have the weakness to Dragon, so we're not weak against every single Pokemon on that team. So we might have decent chances. We'll just have to find out. So sure enough, we make it to the Marlboro Man with Seadra with no issues. We've mostly one-hit KO'd everything getting to this point, so I think we've got pretty decent chances of getting through. Plus, we have pretty decent fence, so I don't think we're going to take a bunch of damage here. Let's see how this actually works out. So against the first Coughing, we can go Surf. That's a one-hit KO. Second Coughing comes out, we'll just stick with the same, easily KOing that Pokemon. Third Coughing also will go down in a single hit. That brings us to the Wheezing. We go Surf, and that does an awful lot. We can knock it out with anything from here. I'm just going to keep my 2 remaining Surf BP for these last 2 Coughings so that we can finish the sweep through the team, and the Marlboro Man stood no chance against our Seadra. So just like that, we can easily win, and we're ready to move on to the basement and rival number 4. So against the rival, he leads off with the Golbat, of course. I'm just going to go Surf right here. It's going to be a 2-hit KO, but we can just knock this Pokemon out with Twister, I think. Sure enough, we can. Magnemite comes out next. We'll stick with the Surf, getting the 1-hit KO. Meganium is out after that. This Pokemon's a little bit scary, so I think we have to go for things like Headbutt for flinches. Unfortunately, Razor Leaf takes me down, so that did not work. That makes me think that we're best off learning a special move, and particularly a special ice type move. I think we go for the Blizzard here. I think that's the best play. Let's see if it works. The reason I'm going for Blizzard, of course, is because it's super effective in the next gym as well. We could pretty easily get one of these Game Corner TMs at this point in the game. Yes, I know that the Game Corner is currently blocked off by the Rockets, but we could have gotten it earlier in the run. It just had it available here, so just take that for what you will. Let's see how that affects this strategy here. So in this case, we can go Blizzard on the first Golbat and just get a 1-hit KO on that Pokemon. We can now Surf on the Magnemite, getting an easy KO there. Meganium, we hit the Blizzard, and we get the one-shot. So that is clearly the solution for this fight. Surf after that on the Haunter is more than enough, and the Sneasel I don't think really stands a chance. We get a 2-hit KO here, but it just really doesn't matter. It's never going to take us down. So just like that, we get through the rival, and we're ready to move on through this section. I think with Blizzard on the moveset, we're also going to do just fine when we get to Claire's gym. So I think this is just the ideal play for this Pokemon. We're definitely more of a special attacker than a physical attacker, so this strategy just makes perfect sense and answers most of the questions that we have coming up. And with no issues, we can make it to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni. Surf should just destroy here, but let's see how it goes. He leads off with the Houndour, of course. We can just go Surf and get the 1-hit KO on that Pokemon. Coughing comes out next. We Surf here as well, just destroying it. And that brings out the Houndoom, which never stood a chance. So we easily crush that one, and we're ready to move on to Claire's gym. The biggest issue I think we're going to have in Claire's gym is just the inaccuracy of Blizzard. It's going to be a little bit of a YOLO strat trying to get through with that move. I think we'll also have to throw on the Paralyzed Cure Berry in order to survive enough turns to use all of the Blizzards, but assuming that we get the luck to get all that to work out just fine, when we get to the final Kingdra, we shouldn't really have any issues there. I'm sure we can just use Twister over and over again in order to knock that Pokemon out. We'll obviously test this all and see, but I think this is going to be a fairly straightforward Claire fight. But then when we get to the rival, he's once again going to have the Meganium, he's going to have the Magneton, etc. So that's where I think having the Blizzard makes the most sense, especially the Meganium with its Razor Leaf. It just does so much damage to this Pokemon due to our low special defense that I don't think we can actually reliably get through those rival fights without the Blizzard TM, which is why I was a little bit fast to go to the move perhaps, but I think it just makes sense after seeing the ranges from the Meganium in that rival 4 fight. It just didn't seem like we were going to get a chance to really get a victory, short of like crazy flinch luck, whereas Blizzard, as we saw, does basically solve that fight. And I think Blizzard will stay on our moveset basically through the league, so I think this is a perfectly valid moveset choice. And sure enough, we make it to Clair with no major issues. So we're going to at least have a chance here. I'm going to put on the Paralyzed Cure Berry because I just think that's the best strategy for this fight. Maybe we can get some flinches with the Twister. I'm honestly not sure, but I think I just go Blizzard against the 3 Dragonairs and hope to land 3 in a row. Let's see if it works. So Clair attempt number 1, we missed the first Blizzard and we get Thunder Waved, but we hit the second one and that is a 1-hit KO on that first Dragonair. Second Dragonair comes out, we miss again, but it also missed, so we get to knock that Pokemon out. Third Dragonair comes out, we hit the Blizzard and simply take it down. That brings out the Kingdra. Here's where I'll switch into Twister. It smoke screens against me. It looks like Twister is going to be a 3-hit KO. Dragon Breath paralyzes me, and I'm just taking massive damage and I lose. We're gonna have to try this again. I think we have to just auto reset anytime that we miss Blizzard and get permanently paralyzed though, because I just don't think we can win against that final Kingdra if we're paralyzed. When we're not paralyzed, there is the chance to get flinches here on top of everything else, and then we have a chance to get 3-hit KO range. She goes for the Hyper Potion this time, but we're actually hitting the Twisters, and if we just hit one more, we will win. Sure enough, we get it on the 4th attempt there. It was a little bit tedious because we just kept getting paralyzed by the earlier Dragonairs and then having to reset. But once we actually get the luck to get it to go, it's not terrible to get through that Clair fight. It's not like perfectly consistent, but you can definitely get the win within a few attempts. With that, we're ready to move on in the game, where we can definitely see our low special defense hurting us a little bit with this Pokemon. But if we can just manage enough offense, we can get through some tough fights. So I think we've got chances here as we go through. I'm not sure if it's going to be as good as the Kingdra though, just because that special defense is so much lower than our special and our normal defense. I think so many Pokemon at the league, and especially when we get to the post game, are going to have a mix of physical and special moves, which will let them exploit a situation like this where a Pokemon is kind of bad in one defensive category. So I'm not sure if we're ever going to actually beat the game on minimum battles with this Pokemon. I gotta be honest, when we get to Red in his Pikachu, for example, there's a very high likelihood that we just get destroyed. Still, who knows? We won't know until we try, so let's just make our way over to the league, see if we can get the victories there, and then we can worry about the whole Kanto section afterwards, I guess. But before we get into any of that, we're going to have to get through rival number 5 and stand on the steps of the league, just like the rest of the challengers in this series. And I think this part is going to be pretty straightforward thanks to the Blizzard, but let's find out. So Rival 5 attempt number 1, he leads off with the Sneasel. We go for Surf and we get the 1-hit KO there. That brings out the Magneton. We're going to stick with Surf right here, also 1-hit KOing it. Meganium comes out. We miss Blizzard. It misses Poison Powder. We miss again. It goes for Reflect. We miss again and get hit by the Razor Leaf before we finally take that Pokemon down. Golbat comes out. We do hit Blizzard on that one, so we get the 1-hit KO there. Haunter comes out next. I'll go Surf, and this is enough to get the 1-hit KO. So that brings out the Kadabra last. We can go for the Surf right here, get the 1-hitter, and we beat the rival in the first attempt in spite of the fact that we missed 3 Blizzards on the Meganium. If he just goes all in on Razor Leaf, we lose. But he's not that smart, so he gives us the victory. And with that, I think we're pretty good to go in the next section. The Blizzard will be good against 3 of the Pokemon on Willy Boy's team, and I think everything else we can manage to get through with Surf, or in the case of the Slowbro, I guess we're gonna have to spam away with the Twister there. It might be a case where we have to freeze the Slowbro though, I'm honestly not sure. Then when we get to Koga, we should have neutrally effective moves for everything. I think we can get through Bruno thanks to our good physical defense. Terran's going to be a little bit random. If we can make it to Lancey Boy, that's where we'll have super effective moves against everything other than Gyarados, and Gyarados loves to go for things like Rain Dance, so maybe he'll give us chances there. We'll just have to see how it actually works out. For now though, Seadra gets through. Let's step to Seaking and see if that Pokemon can move on. So Seaking comes in with Surf, Horn Attack, Peck, and Supersonic. This is another Pokemon that might simply need to go for the Blizzard here. By a level up, we'll learn Waterfall in this section. We won't get to Horn Drill yet. Peck is obviously an incredibly weak move, so it's one that we don't feel too bad about forgetting if we need to. Horn Attack's pretty good, but it could give way at this point to something like Return if we absolutely need a stronger physical move. We are more of a physical attacker here, so there is an incentive to use a move like Return. We don't get a lot of physical coverage, so that's kind of our downfall here, but we'll just see how this actually goes, starting with the whole Rocket storyline. The biggest thing that I expect in the Rocket storyline is that we're just not going to get as many one-hit KOs due to the fact that we have the lower special attack stat. That could affect things a little bit as we go through this section. Still, we make it to the Marlboro Man with no issues, so let's just see if Surf can one-shot his Coughings at least. So up against the first Coughing, I will go for Surf, and that does get the one-hit KO. That gives me pretty good confidence that we're getting through this fight. Even at this kind of middling special attack stat, Stab Surf is just strong enough to knock out the Coughings because of their low special defense. And we're going to get the 2-hit KO here on the Wheezing, so no issues with that Pokemon either. So just like that, we easily get through as we sweep through the rest of the team. We're ready to make our way down to the rival. This is another one where Blizzard certainly could be part of the strategy, especially since that's going to be our best move when we get to Clair in just a minute, but we'll see if we can get through without it. Peck might be enough just due to our higher attack stat to get through the Meganium, but let's see what kind of ranges we actually get. So Rival 4 attempt number 1, we go Surf on the first Golbat. This is going to be a 2-hitter. We get confused. We hit ourselves once and then take a Wing Attack. Still, we take that Pokemon down only to hit ourselves in confusion again on the Magnemite. We'll see that Surf does one-shot that Pokemon though, so if we do manage to get here, we'll at least have a chance. And then Peck looks like a 3-hit KO on the Meganium, so we might have chances without going for something stronger. I'm honestly not sure. Let's make sure we heal up, recover all of our PP, and try this one again. This time we just get Wing Attack from the Golbat, so we get to knock it out pretty easily. The Magnemite comes out and gets destroyed. That brings us back to Meganium. We're going to go for the Peck here. It goes Reflect against me, which is really bad for us. The Razor Leaf does pretty decent damage, and unfortunately we get knocked out by a critical hit. So I think at this point, the Blizzard strats are just the logical solution to this. I'm going to learn Blizzard for now over the Supersonic. Supersonic at this point is just so inaccurate that I don't think it's worth it. Tell me if you think I'm wrong, but that's the strategy that I'm going to go for here. So here, let's just see what Blizzard does for us. When we use it on the Golbat, we do get a 1-hit KO. That brings out the Magnemite. We can just go for Surf and knock that Pokemon out. Meganium time, we missed the first Blizzard. We hit the second one. It's not a 1-hit KO. We do manage to survive against the Razor Leaf though, so we knock that Pokemon out. Haunter comes out next. Surf is the logical play here. We get the KO on that Pokemon, and then we're gonna have to go for Surf on the Sneasel, but it critical hits with a quick attack, so we lose. If we hadn't missed the Blizzard on the Meganium though, we would have gotten through, I think. So let's try again. This time we hit Blizzard immediately on the Meganium and crit, so it goes down in a single hit. Now we can go for the Surf on the Haunter, and we're getting to the Sneasel on full health. At this point, I think we've simply got the win. It does pretty decent damage, but we can just Horn Attack it down and manage to get through on that attempt. So not a super consistent rival fight, but ultimately possible to get through, and we're ready to move on in the game. Now via level up, we could learn Waterfall, but Surf is already better, so I'm just going to skip that move. It's kind of sad that they took the signature move of this Pokemon and then just gave it to like a bunch of water types in Gen 2. Like I remember in Pokemon Stadium when Seaking or Goldeen would use the move Waterfall, they had a special animation and everything, and unfortunately it just doesn't matter in this generation since it just became an HM move. But complaints about lost signature moves aside, we have made it to the Mr. Wannabe Giovanni, and we're ready to destroy him with this Seaking. Against the Houndour, of course, we're just going to go for Surf and destroy it. That brings out the Coughing next, and it has no chance against Surf. And finally, Houndoom is slower than us and we hit the Surf and just one hit KO. Even with lower special attack, it doesn't matter. We get the super easy victory and we're ready to move on in this section. Now, one big advantage that we have as we go into this next fight against Clair is that we are much more defensively balanced with this Pokemon. So fortunately, we shouldn't take as much damage from something like a Twister, giving us better chances of actually getting the win. When we add on that we also have Blizzard, I think we're going to have decent chances of progressing, but let's just see how this actually works out. Our bigger issue might even be just that we don't have a super consistent move against the random Dratinis, because they love to paralyze you and then spam away with the Dragon Rage. We can't take many hits from Dragon Rage at this level, so they actually hit pretty darn hard and could have a chance of knocking us out. Fortunately, Clair doesn't use that move though, so we should get an advantage when we get to her. But ultimately, we get through everything random inside of the gym with no issues, so it's time for Clair herself. Paralyzed Cure Berry is going to be the key here, I think, but let's just see if we can land the Blizzards and manage to get a victory. So Clair attempt number 1, we go Blizzard on the first Dragonair. That's an easy one-hit KO. We level up to level 44. Second Dragonair also gets completely wrecked. The third Dragonair comes out. We hit Blizzard 3 times in a row, so that one goes down with no issues. Now Blizzard is neutrally effective against this Kingdra, but it is still significantly stronger than our other moves. So we'll hit the Blizzard, doing pretty significant damage. It goes for the smoke screen after that, but we just knock her out with 2 more horn attacks. And just like that, we beat Clair on the first attempt. So Seaking proves that it's more of a king in the sea than the Kingdra. It just has no respect for that, retroactive dragon typing added on to that evolutionary line. It says, I've been ruling these waters for longer than you've been around, Kingdra. At least that's how I imagine that Seaking feels about Kingdra deep down in its heart. The utter disrespect of Game Freak to make another king Pokemon in the sea when there was already Kingler trying to give disrespect to this Seaking here. Are you kidding me? Come on. Anyhow, we will get access to Clair's badge here and we're ready to move on to Rival 5. Let's just see how he actually goes. And then we're going to have to get into the league. Yet again, I think these water types are overall going to do pretty well, though there will be a few spots where I think they'll struggle. So we'll just have to see how it actually works out. So Rival 5 attempt number 1 right here. He leads off with the Sneasel. We go for Surf. This is a 2-hit KO, but we can just horn attack it down. That will bring out the Magneton, where Surf is the only good play we have. We still don't manage to get the 1-hitter, but we did have the Paralyzed Cure Berry on, so we knock it out in 2 hits. That brings out Meganium. We hit Blizzard, and it doesn't quite one-shot. We get Poison Powder, though, so that's just fine. We take that Pokemon down. We hit the Blizzard on the Golbat, 1-hit KOing it. That will bring out the Haunter, where we have to go Surf right here. We get the KO, and that will bring out the Kadabra. I'm going to go Horn Attack here, and that is enough to get the victory. So we got poisoned, but we took no damage in that fight against the Rival, and just like that, we're ready to move on to the Pokemon League. So we're going to have to see how this Pokemon goes, of course, as we go through this next section. We don't have the widest move pool, like I said, to synergize with our high attack stat, but our special isn't that bad. Everything's fairly balanced, so I think we've got some decent chances. We'll just have to see how it actually works out. Still, with that one being done, let's move on to Starmie and see how that Pokemon does in this section of the game. So coming back with Starmie now, we're coming in with Surf, Swift, Recover, and Bubble Beam. Obviously, Bubble Beam can fall off the moveset at any point. We're a special attacker, so this is another Pokemon that does make sense to add on Blizzard, and we won't get any new level up moves other than Confuse Ray. Now, Confuse Ray could be really useful, so maybe it's worth going for, but we definitely need something that's decent in order to take down those dragons. So at the very least, I think something like Icy Wind comes into play. Let's just see how this actually goes as we go through this section. Now, obviously, the biggest thing that's holding Starmie back is that it is in the slow level up group, so it's not going to get as many levels as the other water types that we've done so far in this episode. That could be where it actually runs into trouble, just from its lower level overall. Still, we can make it to the Marlboro Man with no issues, so let's see if Surf is enough to just sweep through these Coughings. So So up against the first Koffing, we will go Surf and get the one-hit KO, so we shouldn't have any issues with anything other than Wheezing at this point. It seems like we can level up to level 34 right here as we just continue knocking out the third Koffing. The Wheezing comes out fourth. We can see it's a two-hitter. We can even just use Bubble Beam to finish that one off. Out comes the next Koffing, where we can go Surf yet again, and then finally Surf on the last Koffing to finish the victory. That was super easy. Now we have to see if we can get through the rival in the basement, though. That's where something like Blizzard simply could come in to get through that Meganium. We have decent enough special defense, but it's not great, and we're at a lower level than the previous Pokemon, so it does make a lot of sense to me to at least try that strategy. I might go Icy Wind first over the Bubble Beam just to see, but let's just test and find out if this works or not. So here against the rival on the first attempt, I'm just going to test with my current moveset. We use Surf and it doesn't get anywhere near a one-hit KO on this Golbat. We hit ourselves in confusion, then it goes Leech Life on me. Still, I managed to knock that Pokemon out. Out comes the Magnemite. We can go Surf on this one, getting the one-hit KO. Sneasel comes out next. We can go Surf. Once again, it's not a one-hit KO though. It's a two-hitter. Still, we take that Pokemon down. Meganium comes out. I'm going to recover HP as we get hit by the Razor Leaf. The critical hit did massive damage. It misses a Razor Leaf after that and then goes Reflect. So I guess we have to go Surf at this point. A non-crit Razor Leaf does less than half to us, so we can recover if we don't get the critical hit. When we do get the crit though, we're taken to incredibly low health and we simply go down. So that makes sense that we're going to need a stronger move. Blizzard is the obvious play, so I think we go for that, but I'll try Icy Wind just for the sake of using it once. Let's see what that does here. I'm going to throw it on over Bubble Beam and just see if that gives me a victory or not. So here against the Golbat, we can go Icy Wind, but it's effectively weaker than Surf at this point. So we should just go Surf. That's the ideal strategy. We get Bite, and then we simply knock that Pokemon out. Magneton, nothing changes. Just go for Surf and get the victory. But now when we get to the Meganium, after knocking out Sneasel really quickly, Icy Wind becomes our strongest move. We can see it does a little less than half. We get the Razor Leaf miss though, and that allows us to knock that Pokemon out. Haunter comes out next. We can go Surf and simply one-shot there. So Icy Wind is enough to get the victory. I think that will take us through the randos inside of Claire's gym at least. We'll have to see if it's enough for the actual dragons on her team. But for now, we'll just run with this moveset. I think we'll get through the rest of this section just fine. So let's make our way to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni. And sure enough, without too much issue, we get to the final Rocket Executive. The Executive just before him with the Arbok, the Murkrow, and the Vileplume was actually a lot harder. We reset there once due to bad paralysis luck, but we managed to get through on the second attempt. So I think it's perfectly fine. Mr. Wannabe Giovanni though, he's not going to be that good. Let's see how he actually goes. So against the Houndour, I'm just going to go for Surf and completely destroy this Pokemon. Out next comes the Houndoom. We'll just go Surf here as well, destroying this Pokemon. And that brings out the Koffing, Surf, and he shouldn't stand any chance. Sure enough, he doesn't. We managed to win on the first attempt right there. We're ready to go to Claire's gym. Like I said, I think that the Icy Wind will be enough for all the randos until we actually manage to get to Claire herself. So we're just going to have to see if we can deal enough damage to actually get through on that fight with the Icy Wind, or do we have to go for the upgrade to Blizzard at that point? I think it's pretty clear that Blizzard will one-shot against the Dragonairs though, so if we do go that far, we should be able to get the victory eventually. And sure enough, we don't one-shot with the Icy Wind on the Dragonair just before Claire, so we even lose this fight. We're gonna have to try this section again. I was so confident that I was gonna win there that I didn't save before that trainer. Obviously a massive mistake, as we have to refight everything in the gym up to that point, but that just goes to show why I'm going to very likely end up using Blizzard here, because we are at best getting a 2-hit KO against a lot of these Pokemon. So I think we give the Paralyzed Cure Berry. We'll just test against Claire to see if we can manage to get through with Icy Wind, but if it doesn't work, I think Blizzard is the next logical play, so let's just see how it goes. So Clair attempt number 1, we're going to go Icy Wind on the first Dragonair. It goes Thunder Wave and paralyzes me. We heal with the berry, so we knock it out. That will bring out the second of the Dragonairs. It also hits Thunder Wave and then goes Thunderbolt against me, so I take some pretty massive damage. I think we're going to have to heal against this next Dragonair after it goes Dragon Breath on me a couple times. Fortunately, we do have Recover as a strategy here, so we can take it down to low health and then just try to recover our HP back in spite of the paralysis, and then simply finish that Pokemon off. That will bring out the Kingdra next. It goes Surf against me. I go Confuse Ray in order to confuse it. Surf hits and does pretty decent damage, but I'm able to heal, fortunately. Dragon Breath is also going to do a lot, though. It hits itself in confusion twice, allowing me to heal, however. Now it hits Surf. I hit Surf. My Surf really does basically nothing here, and then we get Hyper Beamed down because we couldn't move. So I think Blizzard is the solution here. Let's just go for that and see if that improves our ranges. So back to Clair with Blizzard. Of course, it one-shots the first Dragonair. We miss the second Dragonair and get paralyzed, and then we miss again and get paralyzed. I think we just reset at that point. Let's try this again. Next attempt, we do at least hit the second Dragonair after it paralyzed me once, and we knock out the third Dragonair. We've got one Blizzard remaining as we get to Kingdra. We hit the Blizzard right there, doing about half. It misses Smokescreen. I'm going to go Confuse Ray right here. And now we're just stuck with Surf the rest of the way. We're hoping it hits itself in confusion and that we can stall out with our recovers against this Pokemon. It snaps out of confusion there, so we're going to reconfuse it, get it to hit itself again. She's already hyper potioned, and she hits herself, and we use Surf. And just like that, we managed to get through on that attempt. So just a couple attempts to get through that fight. It's not terrible with Blizzard, but you do want Blizzard to actually be able to knock out the Dragonairs reliably. And then on the Kingdra, it's kind of about stalling out and using the Confuse Ray strats in order to get that Pokemon down. Still, with that done, I think we've got everything that we need to beat Rival 5 and make our way off to the league, where our biggest issue is going to be that we don't learn a Psychic type move. It would be so nice if Psychic were available to this Pokemon, or even Confusion or something. It's really sad that in this generation they don't give any Psychic type moves inside of the Johto section unless you go for Hidden Power Psychic, which honestly might be the best for this Pokemon, to have Hidden Power Psychic so that you have that coverage. That would obviously make the Clair fight a lot easier because you'd have that stab move that's neutrally effective. But I think in the next section we'll likely go Hidden Power Dark on Willy Boy. Surf is probably going to be enough to get us through Koga. Bruno, obviously we resist the fighting type, so we'll be just fine. And then it's going to be Karen where this gets really kind of random and hard, though we should outspeed things like the Houndoom and be able to knock that Pokemon out. So I think we got chances to get the Lancey Boy. Lance, in the worst case, we're going Thunder Blizzard. That is our strategy at that point. Definitely YOLO, but I think it will ultimately work out. Still, before any of that, we've got to go take on the Rival and stand on the steps of the league. So let's just get this section done so that we have another Pokemon done for this episode. So Rival 5 attempt number 1 right here. He leads off with the Sneasel. We go Surf, and we do not get the one-hit KO, so we're going to have to two-shot this Pokemon. We get to level 42 as Magneton comes out. We will go Surf on this one as well. We do one-shot there. Meganium comes out. We hit the Blizzard and one-shot, so that's very good. Golbat comes out. We hit Blizzard there as well, destroying that Pokemon. That will bring out the Haunter. We'll go for Surf, easily one-hit KOing, and that brings out the Kadabra. We'll stick with Surf. We're not really scared of anything from that Pokemon, so we easily get through, and we're able to move on to the Pokemon League. So just like that, Starmie's made it. Like I said, probably Hidden Power Dark in the next section is going to be its solution. We can try everything else. Obviously, we get access to Thunder, we get access to Blizzard, which we already have on the moveset, so we could YOLO into those two moves to try to get through together with Surf. I'm just not sure how it's actually going to work out, so we'll just have to see. But for now, this Pokemon moves on, and we're ready to move to our last legit challenger today, Qwilfish, and then we'll finish off with our Kabutops. So it is Qwilfish time, and we're coming in with this Pokemon knowing Rollout, Harden, Surf, and Minimize. We're going for all the trolley strats here. This is probably not going to be the fastest Pokemon through this section, but I just have to believe that it's going to be pretty good if it can get all of its setup off. So let's just test this and find out. So we make it to the Marlboro Man, of course. Let's see how he likes a poison fish rather than a poison stick. Maybe it completely destroys him. Let's find out. So first things first, I'm actually going to go for some minimize here in order to reduce his accuracy against me, because if he can't hit me, then I think I'll get a pretty easy victory, especially since we resist poison type moves anyway. We'll also throw on a couple hardens just to be more resistant to damage. Then we can go for surf. We one-shot the first coughing. We missed the second coughing because we did take a smoke screen, but we knock it out the next turn. That brings out the third coughing, which gets completely destroyed. Now to the wheezing, we hit, and this is going to be a 2-hit KO. He managed to hit a tackle, but it did absolutely nothing. We get a level up to learn takedown right here. It is a pretty strong move, but I don't think I need it. I think I want to stick with the surf and the rollout strats, so I'm going to skip that move. We get to the 5th coughing, and then finally the 6th coughing on the team. We can just simply destroy that team and move on. Next up against the rival, I think we're basically going to set up a bunch with minimize and harden on the first Golbat, and then we're just going to try to sweep through the team. Throwing on something like the Bitterberry makes a lot of sense here, just in case we get confused, but I think when he can just no longer hit me, I'll have a victory. So let's just test this and find out. So Rival 4 attempt number 1, I'm just going to lead off again with a bunch of minimize as he's trying to confuse me and trying to wing attack. We can harden so that the wing attack will do basically no damage if it does hit, or if we hit ourselves in confusion, we won't deal as much damage to ourselves. He has to resort to using bite because of the fact that we're so defensive now. And at this point, I think we can simply start using surf. In fact, we should probably go rollout here. So I'm going to switch to that. It's going to take 2 hits to knock out the Golbat, but it does go down. Out comes Magnemite. This is another 2-hitter, but it can't hit the Thunder Wave. That brings out the Haunter. Rollout destroys it. And now we've made it to the Sneasel. I'm just going to go back to the rollout as it goes Feint Attack against me. This is going to be a 2-hit KO, but we do take that Pokemon down. Meganium's out. We hit rollout. It goes Reflect, but that doesn't matter. We get the very easy victory. So just like that, Qwilfish is ready to move on in the game. Its trolley strats continue to destroy everything. For the rest of these randos though, we don't really need to go trolley strats. We can basically just spam surf and win against them. So I'm going to just make my way to the top of the tower and the final Rocket Executive. Let's see how he goes. And sure enough, we make it to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni with no issues, and I'm just going to spam the surf here. Let's see how this goes. First up on the Houndour, we just go surf, getting an easy 1-hit KO victory. Out comes the coughing next. We simply hit it and destroy it in 1 hit, and that brings out the Houndoom. It's slower, and it simply goes down. So super easy victory there. We're ready to move on to Clair's gym. Blizzard and Icy Wind are on the table, but Sludge Bomb is also on the table with our higher attack stat and being a same type move if we get really desperate. But I'm going to try to cheese with this whole strategy of just going rollout after setting up a whole bunch of minimizes and see if that is enough to get me through. Honestly though, Sludge Bomb might be the best play at this point, at least for this gym. We could even forget the move Surf for now and just go with Sludge Bomb and rollout on our moveset. And in theory, that could be a legitimate strat together with our minimize and harden spam. At some point, we might even forget harden with this Pokemon because Defense Curl is an available TM and would be better with our rollout strats. So we could forget Harden on the basis that we will learn that move eventually and just throw on something like Blizzard here as another possibility of how to progress. Or we could throw on the Sludge Bomb there and run for at least a little while with Surf, Sludge Bomb, Rollout, and Minimize as our moveset. We'll just have to test a lot of things out and see how they go, but for now, let's get into the gym and just see how this section actually works for us. And it does seem like we need to make a moveset change because we are getting wrecked by the Dratini's here. So I'm going to go for the Sludge Bomb. Let's just see what that does. Here in Clair's gym, of course, it's a massive upgrade to our moveset, allowing us to deal a lot of damage in one shot against these randos at least. We'll see how it does against the Dragonairs when we get there. We might still have to go for some Minimize plus Paralyze Cure Berry strategies, but I think it will help us a lot with getting through this gym. We actually just missed the range to 1-hit KO on the Dragonair just before Clair, so that suggests that even a Poison Barb might be the strategy here. I'm going to go with the Paralyzed Cure Berry first, of course, just to see what that does for me. Let's see what kind of range we get on the gym leader herself. So Clair attempt number 1, I'm going to lead off with Minimize here, trying to boost my evasion. Of course, we get Thunder Wave to turn 1, but our goal is to set up all the Minimize and basically be impossible to hit. We don't get it on this attempt. We're just getting hit by this first Dragonair a lot. And if we get hit like every time, obviously we lose. But let's try this again. This time we do manage to set everything up, and then we destroy the first Dragonair with a Sludge Bomb. The second Dragonair hits me with Thunderbolt twice in a row though, so I simply lose. What we're really banking on is the fact that Thunder Wave isn't that accurate when used by the AI, so it gives us a lot of chances to set up here. Then here we can still miss the range to one-hit KO against the Dragonair, but we get it down in 2 hits. That brings out the Thunderbolt Dragonair. It hits a Thunderbolt on me, unfortunately, but I do take it out after that. The third Dragonair comes out and hits Dragon Breath. We hit Sludge Bomb and get another Dragon Breath before we can take it down. So we've made it to Kingdra, but we're on very low health. It misses Hyper Beam. Sludge Bomb does over half, and it gets poisoned, and it misses with the Hyper Beam. So we managed to get the victory on that one with the minimized strats. Ultimately, it does work out. It's just not super consistent, but you can get through when you have the Sludge Bomb. And with that done, we can now make our way through these last couple randos and go to the final fight against the rival. And it's time to see if we can get this Qwilfish all the way to the doorsteps of the league. It's not going to be looking great, I don't think, against Willy Boy when we get there, but who knows? We may be able to find a way through with some Hidden Power Dark strats or a combination of the Minimize plus rollout strats there. We'll just have to see. I will definitely say that this Pokemon has outperformed my expectations to this point in the run though, because I thought that it would get wrecked at some point, and instead it's always found a way to just troll its way through every single gym. What I think is extra impressive is the fact that this Pokemon has outperformed things like Tentacool and Tentacruel to this point in the challenge, in spite of the fact that it is like the new generation's water poison type. Getting Minimize and Harden as early as it does is actually kind of OP for this Pokemon. I know a lot of runners would have given up on it because they don't want to run the Minimize strats, but it is legitimately not that great when you're doing these solo runs. But in this case, it has turned out to be enough. But with that, we've made it to the rival here. Let's see how we do against him with our Qwilfish, and if we can make it to the steps of the league on the very first attempt. So of course he's going to lead off with the Sneasel. It does no feint attack, but I'm still going to set up my minimizes right here. I want to be as evasive as possible for everything after this Sneasel, and I don't think it's going to do that much damage as I set up. I say as I'm getting down to like half health here, but we are fully set up now. We can go for the Sludge Bomb on this Pokemon, getting the one-hit KO. That brings out the Magneton. We'll go Surf right here. This is a 2-hitter, but of course it can't hit with the Thunder Wave. That brings out Kadabra next. We'll Sludge Bomb this Pokemon and just destroy it. Golbat comes out. We'll go Surf right here. I'm going to avoid the rollout for now. It can't even hit me, so we easily take it down in just 2 hits. Haunter comes out. We'll go for the Surf, and it is a one-hit KO. Perfectly fine. We level up. We could learn Hydro Pump here. I guess I'm going to skip the move and just run with what I've got right now. So we're just going to have to give up on that one, even though it is our strongest same type move. Surf is more consistent, obviously. And now on the Meganium, we can just go Sludge Bomb and one-shot that Pokemon. So just like that, we have managed to get through to the league, where Stab Sludge Bomb could be useful. Rollout could be really useful. Minimize obviously always gives us a trolly chance to get through opponents if they're not using a move that bypasses accuracy. So hey, Qwilfish, it's not the prettiest Pokemon to run at this point, but it does get the job done. And with that, we've finished our legit challengers for today. Let's get to our last Pokemon, the member pick Kabutops. So we are picking up with Lord Dome, the Kabutops, being supported by channel member Luckpup, and we're coming in with Surf, Harden, Rollout, and Fury Cutter. The moveset that has gotten us this far. We're fairly slow, and obviously we don't have great specials, but our attack and our defense are pretty good, so we have some chances here. Let's just see how we do as we get through this Rocket storyline. This obviously could be another Pokemon that ends up wanting to go for the Blizzard strats in order to get through. we'll just kind of have to see how it works out. Stab with the rollout is kind of good for this Pokemon and does give us some legit chances to progress. So that is one benefit that we have going with this one, even though we don't have Defense Curl at this point. I think our biggest issue is going to be the 4x weakness to the grass type though. So we're going to have to see if we can overcome that against our rival. And we're going to be neutrally affected by water, which could also affect us when we get to that Clair fight. So yet again, we're just going to have to see how it actually works out. Still with no issues, we make it to the Marlboro Man. Let's see if Surf can sweep through this team. Up against the first Coughing, we go for Surf, and we do get the one-hit KO, and that makes me think that we're perfectly fine here. The Wheezing won't be able to do much to a Rock-type Pokemon in terms of damage, so we should basically have the win at this point. It's Smokescreens out of spite, obviously, just trying to find any way to stop us from winning. We level up and we could learn Endure. We'll just skip that move. Let's go for the Surfs on the last couple of Coughings and simply finish this team off. With that, we're ready to move on, and I think against the rival in the basement, I'm going to go Bitterberry and go into the rollout strats. I think that's our best play, so we'll just have to see how that actually works out in this section. There is obviously also the possibility of going for Blizzard if we get desperate. With our lower special attack, I think we would have to go for Blizzard for anything to really help us against the Ganium. As far as level up moves, we will learn Slash at some point here at level 40, but I'm not sure if that move is actually going to be worth it for us, just because there are a lot of stronger moves, and our kind of build-up moves I think give us better chances. We'll just kind of have to see. For now, let's go ahead and try our hand against the rival. So rival attempt number 1, I'm just going to go roll out here. We miss on the first Golbat. Now it's going Bite. We finally managed to hit though, and this is going to be a 2-hit KO if we can just manage the hits. Unfortunately, we're hitting ourselves in confusion every time, and then we miss the rollout. Just terrible. We're going to have to try this one again. This time we do 2-shot there against that Pokemon though. That brings out Magnemite, and we just 1-shot with the rollout. Meganium comes out, and we missed rollout right there. I'm pretty sure we just KO if we actually manage the hit. So yeah, we're going to just need better luck than that to not miss on the hardest Pokemon. It is pretty clear that the Bitterberry is the correct held item here in order to avoid the confusion, because once we manage to set up the rollout, we can just get through these first several Pokemon without any major issues. We get back to the Meganium and 1-shot it this time. That brings out the Haunter. We just hit rollout and destroy it, and Sneasel comes out. It doesn't really stand a chance. It can go Feint Attack here, but rollout will simply end it. So just like that, we managed to get through when we don't get confused. And with that being done, we can now make our way through the rest of these randos, where I think Surf is more than enough, so we should be able to get to Mr. Wannabe Giovanni at the end of this. Now we do level up and get a learn Slash, and I guess I'll learn it over Harden. That will give me a normal move that I can use with a high critical hit chance. It will use our high attack stat. I'm not sure that there's a lot of situations where we're really going to set up Harden in order to avoid physical damage, because there aren't a lot of Pokemon using ground type moves. So I think this makes sense. And with that, we have just another tool in our arsenal to potentially get through fights pretty easily. Of course, later on, we may move on to something like Return, which has effectively more damage output on the basis that it doesn't rely on a critical hit in order to deal a lot. But for now, I think this is a pretty reasonable strategy as we move forward. And with that, we make it to the final Rocket Executive. Here, I don't think we need to get cute. We can just go for Surf, and this is going to be enough to 1-hit KO all of his Pokemon. And just like that, we're ready to move on to Clair with this Kabutops. Sure, we could go for some like Blizzard strats, but I'm going to avoid that for now. Let's see if we can get through with this current moveset that we're rocking. And here, as we make our way to Clair's gym, I think that Slash will be perfectly fine for these like random Dratinis. We're going to have to see what kind of range we get when we finally get to the Dragonairs, but maybe we're just fishing for crits. Maybe we just need a Paralyzed Cure Berry in to build up the rollout. I'm honestly not sure, so we're going to test everything and see what actually works. Here, it was a 2-hit KO on the Dragonair just before Clair, obviously without a critical hit from the Slash, so that makes me think that we're probably best off going for the Paralyzed Cure Berry and maybe even trying to set up the rollout here, since if we build up a rollout, we should be able to sweep through the team, and we're actually faster than everything on Clair's team at this point, so I think we have a reasonable chance of getting the win if we just manage to set up on the first Dragonair. Let's see how it goes. So Clair attempt number 1, we're going rollout right here. It looks like we might be able to get the 2-hit KO on the first Dragonair. We do. That means the next Dragonair is simply a 1-hit KO as rollout builds up. Same for the third Dragonair. We've made it to the Kingdra. We hit rollout and we simply get the victory on the first attempt. Paralyzed Cure Berry plus rollout is the solution if you get here on minimum battles with a Kabutops. Not even hard. Super easy. As long as you don't start getting crazy misses, you're good to go. Obviously, she could also miss with the Thunder Wave some percentage of the time. So the Paralyzed Cure Berry is not strictly required. If you were doing like a, full game solo run where you got to this point and you didn't have a Paralyzed Cure Berry, you're still able to reset for a 1 in 4 chance that you get that Thunder Wave miss and are therefore just able to get through that fight. So I think this is perfectly reasonable with this Pokemon. And with that, we're ready to move on in the game. Obviously, Claire's calling hacks because of the fact that we didn't even give her a chance to hit us because we have a super fast rock Pokemon. But hey, in the anime, Misty got wrecked by a Graveler. So, I think this is perfectly reasonable. So Clair is going to go warn Lance about the fact that there's a rolling rock out here and that rolling rocks are kind of bad for his flying type Pokemon. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to learn about that in time for us. If we do make it to the league and get through basically Bruno, I think Bruno's the real challenge for this Pokemon. But if we can find a way through him, we should be good to go. That's my prediction. We'll just find out if that's actually true or not. But I think that it's just going to come down to getting the right rolls to build up rollout on everything else. Bruno specifically is the one where we might actually run into a wall and not be able to get through, at least not without rare candies and crazy luck. So we're gonna have to see how that fight in particular goes. It's kind of a problem when you give him smart AI and he's got super effective moves with his whole team, so we're just gonna have to see what works out there. Still, that's all looking way ahead for now. We've made it to rival number 5. It's gonna be time to see how he goes. It's of course very sad that we don't learn Earthquake, so we don't get access to yet another strong physical move here. Still, I think we've got chances to get through with our moveset as is, so let's just see how this actually works out. So Rival 5 attempt number 1, we're just going to lead off with rollout against the first Sneasel. We get a 1-hit KO there that brings out Magneton. This is going to be a 2-hitter. We get Thunder Waved. We probably need a Paralyzed Cure Berry here. When we don't get it, we're simply getting wrecked. We did actually manage to get through that Pokemon, but then Meganium is just too much for us. So let's try this again with the Paralyzed Cure Berry on. So next attempt on the Magneton, it does hit the Thunder Wave, but we heal with the Paralyzed Cure Berry, so we take that one down. Meganium comes out and gets 1-hit KO'd. That brings out the Haunter, which also gets destroyed by rollout. We've made it to Kadabra. I'm just going to slash this Pokemon. And with that, we've got the Golbat. I think once again, we can just go slash. It's a 2-hit KO. We get confused, but it's not the end of the world. We simply take it down the next turn and get through the rival with no damage. So when you have the Paralyzed Cure Berry there, you're perfectly fine. If you don't have it, you're going to have a little bit of randomness there, but I still think you could sit and reset for just that 25% chance for Thunder Wave to miss, and that would basically be your strategy to get through there. I think Clair and the rival aren't really that bad for this Kabutops. So at the end of the day, we've made it to this point. We've got lots of TMs available to us as we go into the league. We're going to give Kabutops every possible chance it can get as a channel member pick for Luckpup. So let me just give the massive thank you to Luckpup, already supporting this Pokemon for 19 months. He obviously knocked Chuck out quite a while ago, but he also did a pretty good job just rolling out all over the rest of Johto, and we're ready to make it to the league. We're going to have to see how we do, but I feel at least a little bit of confidence in the first 2 members. The third member, Bruno, is going to be a little bit rough. There's also going to be potentially some rough spots on Lance. We'll have to see, but we're going to just test it and find out. Anyway, with that being done, thanks again to Luckpup. Thanks to everybody who's watched. Let's do our outro and see what we got coming next time. But with that done, we have finished another episode, and it's time to look at the next episode that's coming up. And this is going to be a kind of interesting set of Pokemon. We're going to be coming in with the Mr. Mime, the Jinx, the Electabuzz, Magmar, which means Magby will get in the action, Tauros, Gyarados, Lapras, Sneasel, Teddiursa, and Ursaring. Plus, we've got our member pick, Elekid, down there in this set. So 12 more Pokemon for the next episode. You're going to notice we skipped a couple. We skipped Scyther and Pinsir. That's because I'm going to save those for another episode where we're going to do all of those bug type member picks that are still waiting up there together with the Pinsir, Scyther, and Scizor. So that will be the episode after next, where we're getting into all of those Pokemon, and it's just going to be kind of insane with the Shuckle getting in, with the Heracross getting in, with that Fortress getting in. We're going to clear out like half of the remaining member picks in that episode, but we're starting to get pretty late into the Pokedex. We're running out of Pokemon to actually run in this section, which is good because we really want to get through Clair and get to the league at this point. I mean, Clair has not proven to be a challenge like anybody would expect, I think, of the 8th gym leader. She's just kind of been a pushover this entire time, and it's very possible that she ends up not walling anything. It's possible that we get through with every single Pokemon through this section, but I think that's perfectly fine. I think the league will do its job, and if the league doesn't do its job, when we get to blue and red at the end, I promise you they're going to do their job. There are going to be some Pokemon where I'm just going to throw my hands up and say, I can't get this to go. So just take that for what you will as we continue to progress in this one. For now, though, I'm going to just make my way too early predictions for the next 12 Pokemon. I think that everything basically gets through. If anything struggles, it's going to be a Pokemon like Teddiursa that could have some just issues with being a weaker Pokemon overall, or maybe Magby finally hits a wall at Clair and just can't deal enough damage to get through. But I think everything else just has what it needs to get through this section eventually. There are so many elemental punches available. All of these other Pokemon have strong same type moves. Ursaring has just a great move pool. So honestly, it's really Magby that I'm the most worried about that might not be able to progress. We'll just have to see. But for now, that's my word. I still think that we're going to find a way through with everything. I could be proven wrong. We might drop rare candies. Who knows? But that does it for another episode. I will see you in the next one. Later.